Alex Orfanides. You wear a lot of hats. You're a clinician, an educator, an author, a podcaster, and you also live with the very condition you've dedicated your career to. If someone were to have only 5 minutes with you, what would you hope they understand about you before they left?
I would hope that they would understand an idea which has really certainly inflected my life and that of my career as well, which is that incurable does not mean untreatable. I think a lot of times people are presented with patients with incurable conditions, I should say. Sorry, mixing up my words there. But and they're very quick to think, oh, well, because it's incurable, like, what's the point? And there's every point. Precisely because it's incurable, that's why we have to work so hard to help treat whatever symptoms we can and support that patient with whatever management strategies we can, because it's something they're going to have to live with. So my hope is that they'd understand that about me. My hope is that they would understand that I really do care about this stuff for a variety of reasons. I know we might chat about my life later and some of that will become clear, but it's something I live with and that I see my patients living with and the broader community online as well. And I hope they'd understand that there's just like so much good worth fighting for. Every day I have the absolute privilege to hear from patients. And I've also had the privilege, I guess you'd say, to experience myself of what can happen when you get that support that you need, or that you meet that clinician that just has that way of looking at you, or that treatment strategy, or something which leads to that little breakthrough, even if it's small. Like, these small things can mean so much when you're someone who lives with a chronic illness or disability. So I hope that they would really understand that that part of my view as both a person and a clinician.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things browsing through your social media page and all that I found quite fascinating is there's a lot of your content, like you do EDS, like hEDS content, and then there's one other name that you said, HSD.
Yeah.
Did I get it right?
The terminology is complex, and I think it's always good to be really clear about it. So the Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, EDS, it's a group of, technically, I believe it's 14 if we include classical, like, type 2. It gets complex, but there are 13, potentially 14 different conditions under the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome umbrella at present. Of those, hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, hEDS, is the only one without a known genetic marker. So it's diagnosed based off medical history, it's diagnosed based off clinical assessment, and the exclusion of other potential causes. Whereas those other types of EDS, so again, we're talking 13 types, those other types, they do not have they do have a known genetic marker. So genetic testing, you can go get a test done, and that test will show a gene that will confirm that you have the condition for those other types of EDS. In the case of hEDS and also HSD, which I'll explain in a second, we don't have a straightforward. There's nothing straightforward about genetics, but we don't have a kind of more objective way or clear-cut way of determining people's diagnosis at present, other than the diagnostic criteria, which is what qualified medical doctors, so this would be a geneticist for the most part, although other medical doctors can diagnose hEDS if they believe it's within their scope to do so. And that's what they use to diagnose patients at present. HSD stands for hypermobility spectrum disorders. So the technical term is plural, which always sounds weird to me. Sorry, that's my kitty cat.
Sorry.
That's Ranger. He talks sometimes. But yeah, the hypermobility spectrum disorders, which you will see written as plural, which is kind of weird. Most people will just say hypermobility spectrum disorder. They'll just make it singular. But that's a condition which is diagnosed as an exclusion of hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So you'll have someone who's hypermobile, they're in pain. We can say they present with symptomatic hypermobility. So when it comes to distinguishing hypermobility spectrum disorder from hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and talking about those two terms, which I go into a lot in my book, Help, I'm Hypermobile, Your How-To Guide to hEDS, HSD, and Life in a Hypermobile Body. But just in brief, HSD is the diagnostic label for people who have symptomatic hypermobility, but who do not meet the strict hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos diagnostic criteria. Does that make any sense? Have I explained it clearly?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Well, I mean, as much sense as it can for someone that doesn't know much about it. I think the reason why I kind of brought up hEDS, and I wanted to make sure I was saying the proper words, was going back to your content. One of the things that kind of surprised me is you do specialize in the specifically, I think mostly hEDS, and then what surprised me though is a lot of your content can cater to anybody. Like you talk about, eating healthy and working out and stuff like that. Like, yeah, you do have tips and tricks on there that help people with EDS, but it's a shocking amount of content that, like, I think if the average person just followed, they'd be a healthier person. Is that accurate to say? Like, or have you gotten that before? Is that surprising you?
You're the first person to say that, but I love it. So thank you for saying that. No, and I agree. So I always I always try and explain hEDS and HSD, and just for the sake of clarity, like, they are viewed as kind of the same condition.
Yeah.
Researchers are still trying to figure out, are they actually separate? How do we deal with this very variable population that we see in terms of symptom severity in hEDS and HSD? So that's a question which is continuing to be explored by researchers. But if we group them together, it's kind of like playing life on hard mode. I love video games, and if you imagine kind of like, I don't know if you played Super Mario or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like you have fewer, I don't know how they measure the life meter in Super Mario, but it's like you get injured more easily. Like, you bump into a Goomba, and then you just have like something like horrible happen, where someone else bumps into a Goomba and then they're just okay. So that's kind of like how I think of it. And I can say a lot of the lifestyle management strategies, and again, there are some people with hEDS and HSD who absolutely require very serious treatment. There are people who are severely affected. It really is very much a spectrum. But for a significant number of patients, there are usually some targeted lifestyle strategies or interventions which can help and can make a positive difference. And I think that's where the overlap in kind of, general, just like healthy living stuff and hypermobility, like hEDS, HSD, can start to kind of come together as one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one clip I think particularly comes to mind was nerve stretching, which I had no idea what that was before I watched the clip. And I don't know, I tried it and it felt good. So it's just like, I don't know. It's again, it's there's things on there that, like, I don't think like there's things that maybe you would have heard of, but also things that you haven't heard of that are like, oh, let me try that. I don't have hEDS, but still.
Yeah, I think that's partly affected by my background. So I come to this field from a professional sports background, and that was where I started out my early career. So I'm always looking like through that lens of kind of managing people to that highest physical output demand, which is what athletes choose to do, and it's what people with hEDS or HSD kind of have to do. They end up having to find ways to make their body work. So I think that's why there's kind of this underlying approach to a lot of my clinical work. And certainly most of what I have people do, it would be fine for the general population, like you said, with the nerve flossing. I think it's much kinder than, people, I see them stretching their neck and they're like trying to detach their head from their body. And I can say, as someone with hEDS and with a history of chronic neck pain, that would absolutely make my symptoms worse. I don't know what it's like to not have abnormal connective tissue, so I don't know if it would feel nice for someone who doesn't have the problems I have. But I don't see why everyone can't do nerve flossing. I think it's great. Right. We should all do it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so outside of what we just talked about, is there anything else that you want to shout out that it's like, who are you?
Yeah, in terms of shouting out, so I would say certainly in terms of my work, I specialize in working with patients with hEDS, HSD, and symptomatic hypermobility more generally. It's important to be very clear that there are rare types of EDS, and there are other rare types of EDS even which can involve joint hypermobility. So it's very, very important that people are appropriately assessed. A lot of my clinical work does involve referrals to geneticists and other medical doctors to assist patients with that diagnostic process. And even though my work specializes with patients with hEDS and HSD, it's important that I'm very aware of those rare types, because I have had instances where patients will see me and they've been told, oh, I think you just have hEDS or whatever. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, you're not like my other patients, like I'm trying to help them access care, or maybe a revision, someone to look over their diagnosis again, just to confirm, because I sometimes have concerns about some of the patients I see. So I think certainly my area of scope, I try to work in the area I'm clinically competent in, what I know and what I work with, which is hEDS and HSD, and people who are starting out that kind of journey. Am I hypermobile? Could it be affecting injuries or quality of life or that type? Where do I start is something I certainly help patients with. In terms of myself as a person, this is my field. This is my life. Like, this is my, I guess you would say, kind of like obsession. Like, it's something it is every moment of my day pretty much. And although I know that can borderline on being unhealthy sometimes, it's important to have boundaries and recover and shut off, and absolutely. But for me, I just am very passionate about my work, and I'm very lucky to get to do what I enjoy in a way every day, which is helping people do more of what they want to do in their life whenever possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so can you explain how we know each other?
We know each other. I know we met through Instagram.
Yeah.
I saw your content. I think I must have commented on a video. I think it was Ellie you had on.
Yeah.
I can't remember the comment I made, but I'm a big fan of Ellie. And then I think you DM'd me first. I think that's how it went. And then I just loved your podcast name, Rolling Forward, because for me, I've always kind of tried to focus on content that's very solution oriented where possible. And again, solution oriented doesn't mean like we have the solution. It just means we're trying to make things slightly better, right? So that really resonated with me. And you talked about comedy as well. And we need comedy more than ever in the world, in my opinion. So I was just really so excited that you reached out to me, and I'm so, honored to be on here today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. Yeah, it was, you're actually, I think you might be the first person to come on the podcast that I don't know through anybody else that I reached out to and came on the podcast. So I generally have a network of people that, it's interesting. I'm over a year into podcasting, and I thought, at this time it would be harder to find guests, but it's actually easier because I have all my guests are like, oh, you should have this person on, and you should have this person on, and then I'm finding people on social media that I think would be interesting to talk to and stuff like that. So I am also I think I told you this already, but I'm very new to EDS and like learning about it, and it's so fascinating after talking with Lola and Ellie about their journey, and here you are with EDS, and you're also professionally in it as well. So I'm very, very excited to hear what you have to say about all these things that I have planned. So, okay, next question. If you weren't here today, where would you be?
I would be playing video games.
Okay.
Or what else do I do? Sunday's kind of like my quiet recovery day. So spending time with my family, my lovely partner, my cats.
Great.
I'd be having a recovery day.
Yeah.
So I kind of play down sometimes what I have to do for my health, but to be functional tomorrow for a very packed clinic day, I have to rest today. So I'd be resting.
Yeah. Yeah. What video games do you play?
I've recently just finished God of War Ragnarok. I love God of War. I like RPGs a lot.
Yeah,
so
me too.
my whole story with video games, I got into them when my mom was really unwell. So she had triple negative breast cancer, and she died when I was 21. And I needed something that would get me, that didn't have cancer in it. Every time you watch a movie and someone's unwell, it's like, it's cancer so often.
Yeah.
And I just got frustrated. So I wanted something where nobody would have cancer. So I started playing Resident Evil 4. And I was like, zombies, they're not going to get breast cancer. And then that was when my love of video games developed. I was doing an English literature undergraduate degree at the time as my first degree, and I love the narratives in RPGs. I think they're beautiful. Video games make me cry. Like they speak to your soul, the good ones. And then I've just gone through playing a bunch of RPGs, and that's what I do. So no I don't mind couch co-op. Actually, I love couch co-op, but no, I don't want to play with people online. I want to kind of just, I don't know, get into the story.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Have you ever played the Zelda series?
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
Have you played all the new ones as well? Like
Yeah,
Breath of the
so
Wild, Tears of the Kingdom?
So growing up, I thought that video games were for boys, and like I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be good at them. And my brother played them, but I would be in charge of printing out the walkthroughs and like back in the day, you had to like
Nice.
find
Yeah,
them and
yeah.
print them out. So I print them
Uh-huh.
out, and I would like have all the paperwork and be like, George, you have to go to like this door and do this thing, and then I would be like directing him, and he was just like my little brother. He's really good at video games, so he'd smash the buttons or whatever.
Yeah.
So that exposed me to some of the early Zelda games like Wind Waker, not super early, but I got into the narratives a bit from that point. And then I entered the series with what's it called? The not tier not the one on Switch, not the most recent one, but the
Breath of the
second.
Wild.
Breath of the Wild. Yeah, Breath
Yeah,
of the Wild. Completed that obviously. It's a very peaceful game.
it
I like
is.
the cooking. Like
Yeah.
nothing cooking is just a chill time with Link,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's like the little chest, like opening the chest. I don't know. It's the small things in life that get me through.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I played the most recent one, but in my opinion, it wasn't as good as Breath of the Wild.
I agree with that. I think if it was I mean, if it came before Breath of the Wild, let's say, and Breath of the Wild didn't exist, it'd still be a great game. But they use the same map, and yeah, they modified it, but it was the exploratory part was kind of missing, and I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of the underworld. It felt like they're like, hey, let's just make a desert and put random things in it, and it's like, I don't know, but. Yeah, the reason I asked is I love RPGs. The Zelda series is my absolute favorite, but
Mm.
I have a very addictive personality. So like, if I get into an RPG, like that's like I negate other things in my life to play it, and so like I try as much as possible to stay away from video games because I know that about me. So anyway. That's cool. RPGs definitely are probably my favorite. I don't like first person shooters, so
Yeah, I don't like those types of like, I don't know. I say I don't like mean, violent games, but I like God of War, and Kratos is
yeah,
pretty mean and violent. So I don't
yeah,
know. I
yeah,
like when
yeah.
there's like a magical element. The game that stole
Yeah.
my heart was like The Witcher 3.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you've played it, but Geralt has to go through Velen, and it's tough times at the start. It's kind of like a metaphor for life, you gotta
yeah,
find success how you can find it. Everyone plays video games differently. You build your character in different ways, and for me, even with myself personally, I look at my body and I'm like, there are some things like I am, not going to be as good at as someone else, but what can I level up? Like, what skill tree can I just like
yeah,
maximize, and how can I use that to navigate,
yeah.
the future? So that's kind
Hmm.
of, it affects how I think about the world.
Yeah, yeah. I have an interesting question for you that I'm curious how you'll answer. It's um, if you had to erase either your clinical knowledge or your lived experience with EDS, which would you keep?
No. Hmm. Well, this is a difficult question. I can't decide because they're both
Yeah, that's okay.
valuable, right? Like, and my clinical
Yeah,
knowledge is kind of inflected by my lived experience knowledge. But what
it
I
is.
can say, I heard you're talking another podcast episode I listened to about the importance of trial and error.
Yeah,
And trial and error really helped me. Like when I was first starting out at the gym, trying to find ways to build strength because I didn't have any success with the physios I saw early on. I would just go and see like what can I do that doesn't cause me pain. Like that was just
yeah,
my goal. So I just try like, different movements and see what I could do. And that trial and error has certainly informed a lot of like my personal approaches to my personal body. But of course, when you do trial and error over time, you notice patterns. When you talk with patients, you start to see patterns. So that's what's combined with my clinical knowledge, where you have research and evidence base and treatment protocols for manual therapy and so on. Like that all kind of comes together. And for anyone who's wondering, just because I haven't mentioned it yet, I'm an osteopath. In the UK, osteopaths are people who do manual therapy. So I treat patients with my hands. I do things like sports taping or support patients with accessing different types of braces sometimes or medical imaging. And of course, rehabilitative exercise. And that's a key area I would say I support patients with. So in the UK, osteopaths are not medical doctors. And I'm just saying that because I know in America they are doctors of osteopathy, which is a different thing.
yeah. So this brings up another question. You say you're from the UK, but you don't really have a UK accent. Where are you from originally?
So the joke, maybe this can be my bad joke, but I'm from London. I've always lived in London, but I grew up in London, Ontario. I'm from the second London, inferior London.
That's
So,
awesome.
I had an apartment on the Thames River. I grew up in Sherwood Forest. I went shopping at Covent Garden Market. But it's all the, kind of small town. There's a joke that London, Ontario is Canada's largest small town because it's a city, but it really has like a very small town feel.
Yeah.
So I lived there until I was 21. I was just then heartbroken by what happened to my mom. So I went backpacking. I just wanted to get as far away as possible, basically. And
Yeah.
through a series of events, I ended up in London, UK. But I've lived here for 13 years now. So
Okay.
I'm a Londoner in both senses of the word.
Yeah.
And this is very
That's
much my
awesome.
home. But it
Okay.
has given me a very unique insight into healthcare systems. So again, that's something I
Yeah.
talk about in my book, but Canada only really has a taxpayer funded healthcare system. In the UK, they have the taxpayer funded NHS as well as private healthcare. I work in the private healthcare system here. And then, of course, there are some countries where healthcare is only private. So it's healthcare systems and how the experience of those systems can affect the people who, use those systems is of a great interest to me.
Yeah. That's interesting. I actually have like a few questions about that later on that we'll get into. But first, everybody, welcome to the Rolling Forward podcast, a podcast of people who keep rolling forward no matter what life throws at them. Real people, real stories, powered by purpose, resilience, and a drive that never ends. I'm Zach Sikora. Spina bifida didn't stop me. It just gave me a better excuse to sit down while I take over the world. Today's funny t-shirt is, hold on, let me see if I can get it in frame. It's, you know what I can't stand, and then it says, you know what I can't stand, and then it says punctuation matters. So this is a Zach original. If you want to pick this up, you can go to rollingforward.printful.me. Also, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. If you're a regular watcher, it really means the world, and it helps the channel grow. And if if you're not subscribed yet and you're still unsure, wait till the end of the episode. Hopefully, we've earned your subscription for the podcast. Also, anything that we talk about in the podcast, please leave in the comments. If you're curious about anything, have any questions, any comments, I read them all, respond to them all. So I'm always anxious to hear what you all have to say about the episode. So now let's keep rolling into today's episode with Alex. Okay, Alex, talk to me about when, growing up as a kid. What kind of kid were you?
I was like a mighty child. Like I don't know. There's this picture of me when I was like, I don't know, 4 years old or 5 years old, but I picked out the space background. You know, when you got to pick cool backgrounds for school photos, I feel like they're
Yeah.
less cool now potentially, but we had a choice of all these like different backgrounds and I picked outer space. And I have a plaid dress on because I only wore dresses now, funnily enough, I rarely wear dresses, but I only wore dresses.
Yeah.
Hands on hips, power pose before I knew what that was. So I was just like a very I don't know, like I don't know, a high energy child with strong
Yeah.
views on things.
Yeah. I think I was a high energy child too, and I have always had I think strong views on things. Very, very passionate about standing up for the things that I am passionate about and all that. Quick question though, are you? I would assume based on everything that you do, you're a Type A personality.
uh Define type A. You mean like that I like to organize
there's
everything, or
there's Type A and Type B. Type A are like I suppose they like to have their calendar and plan everything out. Type B are more people who are let's say relaxed and kind of go with the flow. Maybe not as organized, all that. So
can you be both? I think
yeah,
I'm like a type A and type B doing like an internal struggle certainly, and
sure,
that may relate to I don't have an ADHD diagnosis, but I may pursue some investigations in future for that based on some symptoms I
yeah.
experience. But yeah, no, it's I think one of the challenges with hEDS and HSD certainly is that you have to navigate, some days you have good days and sometimes you have bad days. So when I have those good days, I'm like, we're going, like, let's, we're going to get a lot of things done. And of course, there's a balance because you don't want to burn out or overdo it and then trigger those bad days. But when you know that those bad days can happen sometimes, if you want to get stuff done, you have to kind of, as the saying goes, make hay while the sun shines. So if it's shining,
Yeah.
I'm making hay.
Yeah.
So it's navigating that, which I think is really, really difficult, and something that does become easier only really through kind of lived experience and finding out where that line is. Some patients are certainly more perceptive of where that line is, so they can kind of sense a little bit, or maybe they have a greater responsibility to themselves, or, I don't know. But other people are kind of like a bull in a china shop, or, a very enthusiastic puppy where they're just going to do everything and then
Yeah.
come what may.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have a story from your childhood that maybe is a good example of like what kind of kid you were, or what kind of maybe even something that shaped you as a kid to why you are the way you are?
Yeah, let's do one like happy one and one less happy one, we'll say. So,
Okay.
I first like my earliest memory is pain. Like I was 3 and I would cry about my knees aching, and my mom would tickle them and tell me she was going to amputate them, which I don't know what's wrong with kids, but I thought that was so funny. Like I was just like, I don't know. Children have a really weird sense of humor, but I thought it was hilarious. So yeah, my knees would ache. That was like, they called it growing pains, but if you look at the research on growing pains, and I'm happy to provide receipts for any of the research I reference in this episode, but there's quite a good systematic, I believe it's a systematic review, but I'll send through the research in case your listeners want it. But growing pains is just a label that doesn't really have a lot of consensus behind what it means and what we're actually, diagnosing these children with. Could they be children who are actually children with a connective tissue condition and they're getting chronic pain because maybe they were standing all day or whatever, right? Like it's something where I think that we're way too quick to dismiss musculoskeletal pain in children. So one of my earliest memories was of being in pain, and I will always wonder how that affects your brain when that's like a part of your very early experience. The happy memory will kind of say happy in a weird way. I did talk about the story in the book. So I was a swimmer. I was always in the water. I was often training 4 hours a day, even sometimes, because I swam at a pretty intense training schedule. And it got to the point where I was about 12 or 13 maybe, and I started having it felt like my toes were like falling off my body. Like it felt like they were disconnecting from my feet. Like it makes me sick how gross it felt. Like it was horrible. Okay. So I went to my doctor and, family doctor, and we were taught growing up, like the doctor's a professional, don't ask questions, whatever they say is right. That's that, very much like a different attitude than I see in young people today. And I think it's great how younger people are asking more questions and, requesting more explanation and, to be part of their patient experience. But I was 12. And the doctor said, he's like, your toes, they certainly are bendy, but they're that way in both feet because the joints actually will dislocate in my toes. And he said, because they're the same on both of your feet, it must just be how you were made. It's fine. No big deal. Just live with it. So then it gets worse. I was asking a physio at the time, like, can I have some sports tape? Like I wanted to tape my toes together, but they wouldn't give me this like forbidden sports tape. And it's Canada. It's like the early 2000s. I had no money. I couldn't access the sports tape, right? But you know what I could access? Duct tape. So I went to the garage and I got duct tape out. So I would bring my duct tape to swim practice. And my friends were like, what are you doing? Yeah. And I'd just be taping my toes together. And I'm like, I'm just taping my toes so they don't like fall off my feet. So yeah.
I feel like you're almost, in a way, I feel like people could be thinking that you're giving yourself like flippers or something like that. Did you get caught out on that?
Okay, so I was really worried about that because I'm a goody two shoes. Like I only ever got detention once, and it was because I couldn't stop laughing at a joke that a guy made that I thought was cute. So that was my like 5-minute detention in grade 6. Sorry, Mr. Suitor. But I was worried about it being viewed as an advantage, but I was never that good at swimming because I had an undiagnosed connective tissue condition, right? So I only ever was at like regionals level, so I wasn't that like impressive of an athlete, and I don't think they were, I wasn't winning things. I wasn't a threat. Yeah. But the thought did cross my mind.
Yeah, interesting. So and help me understand this. But the way I've understood from like I think Ellie was describing this is sometimes you so the EDS especially hEDS, we'll say whenever we say EDS or whenever I say EDS, I mean hEDS. But so EDS, you're born with it, from what I've gathered. But so Ellie was saying, oftentimes people don't realize, or don't even have symptoms until later on in life. Is that accurate to say?
It gets into this really complex area of how do you feel pain when all you've ever felt is pain, like that. And if you add in the neurodivergence on top, so I believe the statistic is close to 50%, but there's a very big overlap between people with ADHD and autism and people with hEDS and HSD.
Wow.
And there is research supporting a very high correlation that's bidirectional as well. So when it comes to people you've had pain potentially since birth or since your life that you can remember, and you also have people who have certain sometimes, and I'm not a mental health or expert, so forgive me if I use the wrong language here, but a lot of people, to cope with chronic pain, they'll kind of dissociate from their body. So they will dismiss what they're feeling, or they'll try and find, and it's not them trying to, their body as an adaptive process will develop ways for them to not be constantly feeling that pain. So I'm the type of person, I very much fall into the category of someone who kind of didn't acknowledge what I was feeling as pain. The doctor said it's fine. I was being criticized for being overly sensitive growing up. I didn't want to have that label, of being needy or dramatic. So I would play everything down massively. So much so, I walked home from school with a broken arm once because I was like, oh, it's just a sprain, it's fine. And it was fractured. This was back in the days when they just let kids do stuff like that. I just went to the office because I was sick from the pain. I would have been like 11 at the time, but I slipped and fell on my wrist. I literally was sick to my stomach from the pain. I went to the principal's office. I was like, I have stomach flu. Can I walk home? They called my mom and they were like, yeah, she can walk home. Because my home was, to be fair, like a 5-minute walk from the school. But yeah, walking home with a fractured wrist, like that really hurt. So to answer your question, the question is what, like, do people, I guess in terms of like, yeah, tell me.
Later onset in life versus really symptoms later on in life.
Yeah, so there's some interesting research that's come out about the immune component as well. So I can say I see patients where they are adamant that they have not had symptoms early on in their life or, prior to before they see me. And these are people where I truly believe that that's the case for them. They're not people who are like, well, I did have pain in childhood, but I was just, I kind of ignored it. Or everyone in my family has neck pain, so I thought it was normal, which I would put into the symptomatic, but kind of, didn't acknowledge it category. But there are people who really, truly are like, no, I was good. I was fine. I had no pain. And this happened. And my guess is that future research will go on to further confirm the contribution of immune system components of this condition. We know already, for example, that mast cell activation syndrome is a highly prevalent co-occurring condition for patients with hEDS and HSD. For listeners who don't know, mast cells are immune cells that reside within connective tissue, so they live in your connective tissue. And when they start to behave abnormally, that can contribute to a variety of symptoms, including pain and gastrointestinal issues and so on. So I think that we will continue to see that potentially emerge as an explanation. What I will say certainly is that research is very much ongoing in this field. And that was a anxiety that plagued me as I wrote the book, because as I was writing it, more research was coming out, and it's a very stressful process doing that. So I expect we'll get more answers in future. But as of right now, I think you can see both experiences, mine and someone else who was really okay until they were not okay.
Yeah. Okay. And so you're, when did you first, you mentioned that you were 3 and you were having symptoms. Is that around the time that at least you remember having symptoms?
Yeah. No, absolutely. For me, it was from my earliest childhood. So 3 years old with agonizing knee pain that would make me I couldn't fall asleep now if my knee pain was that bad. I would be crying. It was so severe. So, I also had a lot of reflux. So I would be putting, lime flavored Gatorade powder in my water. And I was doing that so when I was sick, it wouldn't taste as gross. Which is we went to the doctor and said oh, I have, I'm being sick. What can we do? And so on. And they were like, oh, it's common. It's normal. You know, people get this all the time. I was just kind of dismissed for being a like needy child.
Yeah.
Or as one A&E nurse put it, like a frequent flyer, I was also called. In terms of my early symptoms, I'm someone where it was very pronounced from an early age. I think the thing that leads to confusion for people is that this is a genetically inherited condition. We know based off familial studies that it is an autosomal dominant inherited condition. So if someone with hEDS has a child, there's a 50% chance that child will be affected if they have a child with a non-affected person. So I think the thing that confuses people is how can someone have a genetically inherited condition like hEDS and then be asymptomatic until until they have that symptom start in their 40s or 30s or whatever. And I think, again, it goes back to the interconnectedness of connective tissue. You know, maybe they were coping because other things in their body were accommodating in some way, or maybe they had a really low stress life, you know, like it was helpful having my mom cook food for me and like look after me and all these things, right? So maybe that led to a triggering of their symptoms. Mine certainly got worse when my mom died, for example. So there's a bunch of things which can interconnect to affect people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It makes sense to me that you would have hEDS and be asymptomatic until later on in life, because it's again, the connective tissue disorder it gets worse and worse over time. I mean, the connective tissue doesn't get worse, but like you start to, the things that happen to you kind of almost build on each other from what I've gathered.
Yeah, we often see an accumulation of injuries and of co-occurring conditions. I think a really good tool that some practitioners use in assessment, there's this like star diagram where you can kind of try and quantify people's affectedness based on which systems they are affected most within. So I have a lot of gastrointestinal problems. So my musculoskeletal function is very well managed, and I'm not as symptomatic there as I was previously. But my gastrointestinal problems are ongoing, and there's something where I'd probably receive a higher score versus my cardiovascular symptoms, as those are pretty well managed and low. So you can kind of look at people through different lenses. For example, I'll never forget early on in my career, I met a patient who had the most hypermobile joints I'd ever seen. You know, they had hEDS, and again, you can be not that hypermobile as well and have this condition. So people think you have to look like a, contortionist or something to have hEDS or HSD. You don't, because I thought I wasn't hypermobile enough. But they just happen to have a great deal of very obvious joint hypermobility. And I was doing their medical history with them like I do with every patient. And I said, do you have any gastrointestinal issues? Or tell me about your gut health or your gut function. And they were like, it's good. And I people say this at the start, they get shy, right? They get nervous. And I was like, okay, so how are you with this? Like, how is that? They're like, no, it's fine. And I was like, can you like drink beer and eat pizza wings? And they're like, yeah. They're like, I can have whatever I want. Like, my gut's good, And it was the first time I'd really been confronted early on in my career with how variable this condition can be. Because drinking beer and eating chicken wings and pizza would I don't know, I'd be on the couch for a few days. Or in the bathroom, maybe.
Yeah. Interesting. Oh man, I had a question. It was, do you, so in the medical sense, would you consider hEDS degenerative?
In terms of, can it cause injuries that relate to degenerative changes in tissue?
No, you've got things like multiple sclerosis that just like it attacks your body. It gets worse over time. So I was talking with Ellie, and she was basically saying that it's not degenerative in the traditional sense, and which I think I agree with. But I was curious what you thought. But at the same time, because injuries build up on top of each other and things get worse. Things do get worse over time. I'm not discounting that, but is it a degenerative disease or issue? I guess.
Yeah, I think what can lead to a lot of people's symptoms becoming worse over time is the accumulation of chronic co-occurring conditions. Your risk for various conditions goes up as you have other conditions. So, someone might start off like me and they were diagnosed with IBS when they were younger, and that might progress into other issues as they age and become more
Yeah.
serious, or if they are not managed and unsupported. Same with musculoskeletal issues. If you have an ankle and you sprain it, and let's say like you rupture the ligaments in that ankle and then you're not treated, you're not given any support, that's going to
Yeah.
make life harder for your hip further up the chain, and your back potentially, and your knee, right? So it's like you get this cumulative knock-on effect and this interconnectedness, which I think can lead to the appearance of a progressive degenerative condition in that sense, although it's not. I want to be clear. I don't want someone listening to this being like, oh my gosh, I have HEDS or HSD, like I'm doomed, like everything's going to get worse. Because
Right.
I'm going to say something, I don't think it should be controversial, and you will meet more people like me as you continue to speak with people who have hEDS. And again, I want to be clear. hEDS and HSD are not, they are very distinct conditions within the EDS umbrella.
Yeah.
And for other EDS conditions, it's very different. Vascular EDS in particular has a very, very different, outlook. But when it comes to hEDS and HSD, I am someone with hEDS. And if you ask me, Alex, do you want your 21-year-old body back or your 16-year-old body back? Absolutely not. I'm going to run away screaming. The pain I had when I was, I'm 34 now, and I feel the best I've felt in my life. Why?
Wow.
Because my symptoms are managed. Because it's my
Yeah.
job, and I'm really lucky in that I'm able, I live in a big city, I can access healthcare.
Yeah.
Managed symptoms will generally be better than unmanaged symptoms.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. Yeah. That's hopefully promising for someone listening with HEDS, that like they can be. I mean, of course, it can be treated, and you can have better symptoms over time. So
Yeah, that's why I like the word managed too, because if I'm treated, it sounds like we're going to treat it and it's going to just be like good and stuff. It is an ongoing process. And for me, like at my low, just to contextualize this a little bit, I was having trigeminal neuralgia. I had facial pain and headache. So I would get this neck pain that would crawl up my neck. And then it would feel, I always do this symbol. If you're watching video, you'll see, but eye and upper and lower jaw, basically the 3 branches of the trigeminal nerve. And it feels like someone is like pushing their hand through your skull and like reaming on your eye and your teeth. And it's horrific.
whoa.
Yeah, that pain, like, of all the things that scare me, having that pain again routinely scares me. I still get it once or twice a year. I can cope with that. But in my early 20s, I would just lie in bed with a pillow on my face in the dark for days at a time. I couldn't have worked. I couldn't have had the quality of life I have now. And it was painful to get up and walk to the toilet. It was painful to get up for a glass of water. Like that is my biggest fear, certainly.
Yeah.
And it's a symptom I see in a lot of people. It's something I do. Complex neck pain is something I do work with patients a lot. And again, complex neck pain is complex because sometimes patients will have things like upper cervical instability, craniocervical or atlantoaxial instability, but they'll have different types and degrees and presentations of instability, which require different clinical management. I'm very lucky in that in my case, my neck is just hypermobile in a general, like basic sense. And I was able, through strength training and targeted manual therapy treatment, to improve and manage my symptoms. But those dark days, like, people don't get sometimes just not wanting to be here because the pain is that bad. So just to contextualize, like, I'm really happy now and I have a great quality of life, but it's because my symptoms are well managed.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to you and kind of your story. So when were you, like, I actually, let me ask this, like, can you just share your diagnosis story? Like, sounds like early on that you had doctors that were like, oh, you're fine. But yeah, anyway, can you just kind of walk me through that journey?
Yeah. Can I take you through some of my injury rap sheet first?
Yes,
Is that okay
please.
to start?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I wrote it down because I always forget stuff. So I've had quite a few things happen. So I had a lot of shoulder pain when I was a swimmer. My first viral TikTok was me talking about how I would tell the physio my shoulder felt homeless. And they were like, what do you mean? Is it painful? I'm like, it's not painful. It was. I just didn't acknowledge it at the time. But I was like, it just doesn't feel in place. It feels homeless.
Yeah.
So ongoing shoulder pain that would be triggered by things like walking or carrying a shopping bag. But when they would do all the orthopedic testing, it was fine, which is really confusing because the thing that's supposed to make you hurt doesn't make you hurt, which then makes you think, am I hurting? So leads to a lot of confusion. I've ruptured both my quadriceps tendons. So a rupture is not even a tear. It's like where the thing actually detaches fully.
Detaches.
They found each other again, the ends of the tendons. There's a YouTube video showing this. So I was a model for a course with a rare type of injury that's seen mainly in professional footballers. And the medical doctor, he goes to scan my normal side and he's like, "You didn't tell me you ruptured this one too?" And I was like, "I don't remember doing it." So apparently I've ruptured both of them. That's on YouTube. I'll put it on my socials again one day, but it's there. I did not imagine it. And the one I ruptured, it took me 6 months to recover from it. And it was just a body weight lunge at the gym. I just did a body weight lunge and it went ping. And then to walk home, I had to grab my leg and like throw it over the curb because my whole flexor mechanism was broken. So I couldn't walk normally. Yeah, but that's not even the worst of it. So I fractured 5 bones. So there was a 9-month stint when I was in grade 5 where I fractured a growth plate in my right leg. So my right leg is shorter than my left. I fractured in my wrist a growth plate. So my right arm is shorter than my left. It's not obvious, but it affected me a lot. We can talk about that later when we talk about things that help me. And I fractured a bone in my foot just jumping up and down a gym class. So I had multiple fractures happening. I have had serious gut issues. So I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I'm going to say it anyways. Like, people don't talk about bowel issues enough, especially young women. And we're seeing rising colon cancer rates in young people. And with hEDS and HSD, for people with bowel issues, it becomes when your normal is abnormal and you're looking at the list of colon cancer symptoms and they're like, "Oh, change in bowel habits." It's like, dude, it changes every day. Like, how do I know if this is a change or not? But a lot of my gut issues started when I went 3 weeks without a bowel movement when I was 15. And this was, And this was before social media was big. So I was asking my friends, imagine how desperate you have to be as a 15-year-old girl. You're like, "So when's the last time you went to the bathroom?" You know, it's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, when's the last time you went? So that was 15-year-old me. And again, they just said it was anxiety, you know, whatever. And like, I'm lucky I didn't die from that. Like, there's a certain point, if you don't have a bowel movement where your colon's going to like explode or horrific things happen. So I'm very lucky that I'm here, but that was extremely serious. I also had serious eye issues. So my vision was -10. So that's very high myopia, which does occur at increased rates in people with hEDS and HSD. And
now, -10, real quick. Yeah. That's nearsighted or farsighted?
Nearsighted. So like I would wake up next to my boyfriend and he would be here and I couldn't see him. Like I literally. So I would get so scared. What if there's an emergency? You know, this was kind of, I was living in London at the time and I'm like, what if, you know, there were all these terrorist attacks? And I was like, what if something happens and my glasses fall off? Like, I'm going to just die. Like, I'm scared. So anyways, it got to the point where I had blood vessels growing in my eye. Now, this is not directly linked with hEDS, to be clear. Okay, this is probably a separate thing. And also the fractures I had, there's no clear evidence linking it directly. But I ended up having a major, like not major, but I had an eye surgery where I was awake and they, you know, were doing things to my eyes with a knife in my eye, which saved my quality of life. And I'm so grateful I had that. And I'm so grateful I was able to afford that privately. But that you have to be pretty desperate to want someone to stick knives in your eyes and pretty unhappy with your quality of life. Yeah. And then, I had my jaw surgery. So this is on the diagnostic criteria, high or narrow palate. I had an overbite that was so severe that my lower jaw would be about 2.5 centimeters back from my upper jaw. So I could fit 3 finger widths between my upper front teeth and the front of my lower teeth.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it was so bad that I couldn't eat normally. So to eat an apple, I couldn't bite. I had to like hook chunks of the apple out with my front teeth. And I couldn't eat a sandwich because my teeth, they couldn't bite. So the filling would just come out. Like, it was so sad. And in Canada, of course, you get made fun of for being a beaver because I look like a beaver. And when it's -30 out, it's not nice. I couldn't really close my lips very evenly over my teeth because of the overbite changing my jaw. So I had double jaw surgery, which I've been meaning to make content about from ages, but I had double jaw surgery. And I'm grateful I had it. It really improved my quality of life because every day I eat an apple or a sandwich. I'm just a very grateful person. But I had a 1 in 2 million bone infection happen 5 years later. And they said I was a drug seeker when I went to A&E, and I could have very nearly not been here from that. So I've had like, just so people can see, like, because I often don't talk about this stuff, but I've had a wild time, I would say. So in terms of my diagnostic story itself, all that happened and nobody knew I had something going on with me. I thought I was just like weird, basically. And then I started working with, in my career, I started studying, looking at the body and muscles and joints. And, you kind of start to put two and two together eventually. And then I was working with athletes and I was really confused why even their parents would beat me in workouts. Because sometimes before the competition, I do a workout with like the 50 or 60-year-old parents.
Yeah.
And I like couldn't do a press up or burpees or something. I'm like, why is my body like not letting me do these things I should be able to do? And then I put that I
Can I
yeah,
ask
go on.
real quick? So you parents were beating you in these workouts, but like, is that a muscle issue, or were you in pain doing those and you couldn't do them? Like, what was that connection there? That
Yeah, it was a few things. So I was working with CrossFit athletes at the time, and to use examples of some movements, so burpees, where you go down to the floor and up, I would feel really nauseous. And I was like, why? How do people do these? Like, I feel like I'm going to be sick. And then later, of course, I learned about dysautonomia, and that describes the dysfunction, so this altered function of the autonomic nervous system, which in part affects your ability to regulate blood pressure and heart rate. So it
yeah,
makes sense now. I'm also quite tall. I'm 5'10", 5'11". So I was having a really hard time going from down on the floor to upright. And that was something which, in my case, I've been able to really positively affect a lot of things. So now I can do burpees. And again, this is not everyone with hEDS or HSD should exercise or has to. People do have post-exertional malaise. Some people have other conditions. Like, there are many reasons. Everyone's approach to exercise must be unique to them. But in
yeah.
my case, thinking about why I couldn't do something and then trying to do some gentle cardio and go back and, kind of troubleshoot, that really, really helped me. With movements like push-ups, so I would get pain inside my shoulder that felt like there was glass in it. But when you imaged my shoulder, it looked perfect. It looked like the best, no rotator cuff strain, like no history of a tear, like it all looked fine. And I think what was happening is just the movement was altered to such an extent that structures were rubbing on each other that shouldn't be rubbing on each other when I would do that pressing movement. And over time, I've had to kind of build a lot of strength in my shoulder girdle. So the muscles, between my shoulder blades and kind of on my back, to stabilize that part of my shoulder, which now lets this, what we think of as the shoulder, the glenohumeral joint, move without pain for the most part. So it's been a lot of troubleshooting.
Interesting. Okay, so anyway, you were getting into the different injuries that you have. So
Yeah, and the diagnosis.
What else is on the
eventually.
list? Yeah, and then the diagnosis.
Yeah, I don't know. I had various other gut things too. I will mention that just because a lot of people, they don't talk about them. So chronic issues with diarrhea, constipation, serious pain, episodes of pain that were agonizing. And again, when you're a 22-year-old woman, you don't want to talk about these things, or maybe people are more comfortable now, but I wasn't comfortable at the time. And I was so used to being dismissed by medical doctors. I had seen my mother go 6 times to her doctor complaining of a lump in her breast, only to be ignored until it was too late. So I had kind of disengaged from the medical system, and I'm not advocating that people do that. In fact, I advocate the opposite, and I try to help my patients access brilliant medical doctors who help them in so many different ways. But at that point, I'd kind of just given up and was just trying to cope with everything I could cope with on my own. But it got to a point where, because of my work with professional athletes, I was working with kind of the complex, chronic, and treatment resistant. And I put treatment resistant in quotes because an injury is only treatment resistant until you find the person who actually has the treatment strategy that works for it, So I
Yeah.
hate that phrase, and I really think it's a patient blaming phrase. Like, oh, it's your fault. Your shoulder is treatment resistant. It removes the responsibility from the healthcare professional. So I got to the point where I was working with those injuries. I put that as my Instagram bio. And then I was like, should I just, I kept getting these hypermobile patients because they're all the ones with chronic, complex, treatment-resistant injuries. And then I spoke with one of my friends and I was like, should I just say I specialize in like hypermobility related injuries? And she was like, Alex, like you're obsessed with that. Like that's all you do, obviously. And
Yeah.
then I built up the courage to like say that. And then from there, eventually I got my diagnosis sorted. In the UK, you really have to pay privately. In theory, an NHS, so taxpayer-funded GP, can diagnose in theory, but understandably, many of them don't feel it's within their scope to do so. So you end up in a situation where it's kind of pay to play. So I had to, save up money to see a geneticist, to be assessed, to then be diagnosed with what my diagnosis is, which is hEDS.
So it sounds like you almost, I mean, you were in the hEDS world before you were diagnosed with hEDS. And so did you know you had it, but just weren't diagnosed with it? How long, at what point did you realize that you had it and may I ask, how old were you when you received your diagnosis?
Yeah, it was only last year. So it's,
What?
I'll tell you the story behind that. But yeah, I was working with medical doctors at the time. So, when you work in healthcare settings, you will talk, and people were like, you meet the diagnostic criteria for this. And I was like, yeah, I know, and that would have been around 2020 or so, back then, 2019. Actually 2019 would have been pre-2020. But yeah, in terms of my diagnosis, one of the things that prompted me to get the diagnosis is my partner and I were discussing the possibility of me being pregnant one day. And that's something I take very seriously because I see patients where it goes not well sometimes. And I'm not sure what I will do. That's something which remains for my partner and myself to figure out in future. But I can say that I would never want to be pregnant without a diagnosis because there can be situations where you need that diagnosis so you can advocate for yourself and say, no, you have to do this. You're required, you can't treat me in that way. You have to do this. And although to an extent, like I was kind of okay with neglecting my own health, because a diagnosis is important. As a healthcare provider, I have to urge everyone to get a diagnosis. Like I have to believe that it will help patients. That's what the point of it is. The sad reality is often people tell me negative stories about having a diagnosis and they find it doesn't help, or they feel like they get judged more by healthcare providers, or they, even in the UK, your healthcare insurance coverage can be affected. If you have a diagnosis, your insurer can raise your rate, extremely high, or even maybe not cover you. Yeah,
Whoa.
UK private health insurance is a whole podcast episode of itself. But I got my diagnosis because I couldn't bear the thought of not being able to advocate for myself when it was affecting another human's life potentially. So that's what prompted it. And it was about time. I had some ongoing health things I needed kind of to get sorted, and that diagnosis helps with that.
Yeah. So an interesting thought came about is especially with like social media and internet, there's a lot of people that like kind of self-diagnose themselves with whatever it is. Do you see, do you see people like misdiagnose themselves with hEDS and like say, oh yeah, I have it, I haven't gotten diagnosed. And then it's like, nah, you probably don't actually.
Yeah, I think it certainly is an issue from a safety perspective. That's why, again, like, I was doing something by delaying my diagnosis just so I could have the money to afford it, which I think is a totally legitimate reason as well. Like I literally couldn't get it. But I was doing that with the knowledge of some of the risks involved. Like if I had needed major surgery or something, there are ways that it can cause lots of problems or affect you. So going undiagnosed professionally, like if you're like, oh, I self-diagnosed, the healthcare system will not care that you have self-diagnosed. It doesn't really achieve anything, in terms of your care. So I think that sometimes the normalization of self-diagnosis leads to potential harm, and that some of those people may not realize that their self-diagnosis is not a medical diagnosis and will not have the consequences of such. I think as well, there's always a danger that people diagnose themselves with hEDS or HSD, or I should say self-identify, like a diagnosis has to be made by an appropriately qualified healthcare provider. Like I can't diagnose people with hEDS or HSD. I'm not qualified to do so. You have to see a medical doctor who's competent in doing that. But the danger would be certainly that some of these people will have a rare type of EDS. And some of those types can be very, very serious. So, or I have to say, there are other health conditions that can cause the symptoms that present in hEDS. And we need to be careful with those. People get scary cancers sometimes, or they have other lupus, multiple sclerosis. Like there are so many differential diagnoses. And I, as a clinician, when I'm in clinic, of course, I trust the diagnosis my patient has for the most part, but I like to really make sure my patients are safe. So I'm always thinking, do their symptoms match up with their diagnosis? Do I need to refer them for a second opinion? And even the patients who have hEDS, where say it was correctly diagnosed, is HEDS explaining their symptoms adequately, or could something else be the cause of their symptoms? I hate the game. Is it HEDS, HSD, or is it something else? Like, I hate that game so much.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. You know what's so let me ask you just for context before I ask this next question. How long have you been working with EDS patients?
I think since about 2020 or so, 2021 maybe. Well, like in the formal sense of like identifying publicly as doing that.
So about 5 or 6 years. And what's interesting is you said that you can't diagnose people, but I would almost argue, having EDS yourself and then like working with so many patients with EDS and it being part of your specialty to do so, I would almost argue that like, and this is coming from no context or prior knowledge, but I would almost argue that you're more capable than some of the doctors that maybe you refer your patients to diagnose EDS. And
yeah,
I know you can't, but
I think it gets complicated. So everyone has their scope of competence. And I have so much to work with patients with movement pattern issues and muscle and joint pain. Like my plate is so full. Yeah. So the thing that would make me incompetent at diagnosing HEDS and HSD is the lack of knowledge of other conditions. It's that differential diagnosis list. So I love sending my patients to the geneticist I refer to. I have one that I'm thinking of right now where she's been told, like she probably has HEDS, but she has just some different scars and different things presenting where I just really, really want someone to look at her to give me more confidence as a clinician. So for me, it's really helpful to be able to refer to a professional where they're looking at a broader variety of patients. They've spent, 12 years or whatever, in their medical studies and their research, ideally in the field of connective tissue as well. Though those will be the best medical doctors who truly have an expertise that I will not achieve in this field as like a whole in terms of all of, there are so many different connective tissue conditions. There's even things like Marfan syndrome and low hEDS. So we talk about EDS, which is one group of connective tissue conditions, but there's a lot of them. There's so much more. So I appreciate your view of me as a professional, and certainly like I think I can I can look at someone, I can say if they have generalized joint hypermobility or not. So I can say if they're hypermobile in joints and how that kind of presents in them, and that's within my scope to do so. But when it comes to that medical diagnosis, I like the system as it stands, where we have to get a medical doctor to sign off on that, just because it is quite serious.
Interesting. That's an interesting perspective. I almost think, and again, having no knowledge of the system myself, but I almost think that if I was in your shoes, it'd be frustrating not to be able to diagnose people. But
I don't get frustrated by I get frustrated by the lack of patient support. I get frustrated by I had a patient recently, I think this is appropriate for this podcast, where they were told by another physio who gave them one of my pet peeves is when physios give patients like 30 exercises and they don't take the time to go through them with the patient. Firstly, why are you giving someone 30 exercises? I'm going to be overwhelmed if you give me this. Like, it just is a road to failure. But secondly, they don't go through them with the patient. The patient gets a couple diagrams. And these hypermobile patients, they are people who move differently as per the term. So their physical expression of the movement they're trying to do may not be and likely will not be how that exercise is intended to be done. So this patient was told by their healthcare provider, like, oh, well, if you don't do this, you're going to end up in a wheelchair. And I was like, why are we threatening people with, like, it's just such an ableist garbage, like, statement. Like, that stuff made me furious. Like, I have a lot of anger. I think it was Ellie who was talking about spite or rage or this type of anger. Like, I have just so much on my plate trying to support my patients' like mental health in appropriate ways, because this patient obviously had developed some anxieties and confusion, and it's the ableism and the stigma of this condition. People thinking it's a TikTok trend or whatever. Like, I have so many fires I'm fighting all the time, so I'm very grateful to not be diagnosing HEDS or HSD.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Walk me through a good day. I actually let's. I'll leave it to you to decide which direction you want to go first. But I want to know about a good day or in a bad day for you personally.
Yeah, bad day's really easy. So bad day for me normally, I have neck pain on the left side that progresses into the facial pain I described, and headache and nausea. And I will, luckily now I can try and self treat. So I have a whole toolbox of interventions that I'll go through, and I will just try, will this help? Will this help? Can I do this? What can I do? And sometimes I'm able to, what I call nope out of it. Like I'm able to kind of stop that cascade of events from continuing. That's very rare. Normally, I'm just able to delay the amount of time that I have that symptom expression or decrease the intensity, but I'm able to affect it, which makes me feel in control, makes me feel happy. And my bad day now is like 10% as bad as my bad day of 10 years ago or 15 years ago. My good day would be I just seem like a very normal person, or even maybe like maybe extraordinary. That sounds weird. That sounds really stuck up to say, but like I'll go, I had a day where I saw patients, did a magazine interview, did more patients, then like went to a CrossFit class or whatever, and then came home like that, and then did some work emails. Like it'll be something that's like very packed, like that, like millennial, whatever, like, that person who's like getting it, trying to do everything in their career, that kind of vibe. That'll be a good day. And normally, because I'm pretty good at working with my body now, I'm able to not overdo it and to recover enough. And I do take scheduling recovery very, very seriously. And that's something that my work with professional athletes taught me. But luckily, I'm able to kind of navigate my health in a way that doing one day like that won't knock me out. Because
Yeah.
that's an issue that's really, really common and that I certainly struggled with previously. So, because we don't want a good day to come at the cost of like 5 bad days. That's not
Yeah.
really a good
Right.
return on investment of your time.
Right. So,
So, yeah.
I'm sure there are bad days, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure there's bad days that maybe like sneak up on you,
Yeah.
and you have a pretty busy schedule. So, like, how do what do you do about those days?
Yeah, so the bad days that sneak up on me for the most part now are going to be gastrointestinal related, I'd say. And something like 80% of people, or maybe it's 87%, the number is high 80s, with hEDS or HSD have gastrointestinal issues of various kinds. So for those, like keeping medication to take in my clinic bag, so if I make it to clinic, I'm not having problems. I mean, I can't be with the patients, like those types of interventions, being
Yeah.
prepared as much as possible can help, certainly, for those unexpected bad days. I don't, for the most part, but this was a big issue in my 20s and teens, have days where I have to like cancel plans with people. But that was
That's good.
something where, yeah, I lost a lot of friends because it's like, what's the point of inviting her to brunch if she's going to cancel last minute? So
Right.
that was a really difficult point in my life for me, certainly. But I think in terms of bad days, it's what helps me avoid having a lot of those disabling bad days, in the sense where I would have to, and again, disability can present in different ways, but those days for me where I'm out for the count in bed with a pillow on my face, trying not to be sick, those types of days, is
Yeah.
having that toolbox of things I can do. Will
Hmm.
taping help? Will nerve flossing exercise help? Will some self treatment that I can kind of do on places of my body I can reach, will that help? It's one thing that's really affected my work as well, my passion about having things you can do when the symptoms occur, because I'm not with my patients all the time. They might have a flare and I'm not there. So my goal is to give them as many tools as I can so they can try plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, go through that list. Because A, it keeps you in control. You're having your body's feeling out of control. You're having this symptom flare. If you feel in control, you're going to feel more calm. And that's better than feeling out of control. But B, often we can, as I said earlier, like take the edge off a bit or decrease the duration of time they experience those symptoms or get some marker of improvement that helps to guide further strategizing and further trialing of these interventions to lead to a greater improvement. So I think that's how, like, I haven't had a day where I've had to cancel everything in a long, long time. Like I can't remember the last time that happened, but it was a big issue for me.
That's great. Okay, so I so I have spina bifida, and I always like to try to look at the positives of things, and we were kind of talking about that before the podcast as well, with for both of us, and so I'm curious what you think hEDS for you, what it's shaped you in a positive way to be.
Yeah. I think it forces you to become a very empathetic person for the most part, because you know what suffering is like. So you always think, like when I would have a friend cancel, my assumption was like, oh, she must have something going on, or you know what I mean? Like, or
Yeah.
you always try and, or at least I should say, I should speak for myself, but I always noticed that I was very keen to think that other people had reasons, you know, why they couldn't do things sometimes or why something was hard for them. So I think that empathy is beautiful. I do think as well, though, that empathy can sometimes lead to people being taken advantage of, or even potentially an increase in abusive relationships, which we know occur at higher rates in people with disabilities as well.
Yeah.
There's no direct study on hEDS or HSD, but we can say from research on people with disabilities that is higher. So I think the empathy, which is good and bad. I think as well, resourcefulness. Disabled people and people with chronic illness are like the most resourceful group of people I know. My incredible assistant has hEDS, and I think we were talking earlier about like how, you know, she and I have managed to get some things done for the business and sort things, and it's like we, you know, sometimes there are things we can't do. Sometimes we do have to reschedule a meeting because one of us isn't feeling well. But like the things that we get done, it's just like, okay, this issue, whatever. Let's see if we can fix it. Okay, this problem, whatever. Let's see if we can fix it. It's like that duct tape mentality with my toes. I'm like, oh, my toes feel like they're falling off my body. Let's get some duct tape. Why not?
Yeah.
So I think the resourcefulness is a trait I certainly wouldn't have had as much if I didn't go through or live with what I live with. And I think as well, just, I don't know, it's like enjoying the good days, I think. For me, losing my mom when I was 21 really did shape a lot of my career and my experience of my body and my life. And you never know, you know, how much time you'll have or what will happen regardless of what your health condition is, right? So I think looking for those, whatever makes your heart sing, whatever makes you happy, I think grabbing onto that and just holding tight and pursuing that's something I do more because of what I've gone through and what I continue to go through. And it's why I'm so passionate with my patients. Like, I've had patients surprise me with what they can do. One of my patients, she's a glass blower, and she's talked publicly, so I can share this information because she'd probably be pretty identifiable given that it's a small field. But I first met her and I was like, you know, I looked at her injuries, looked at her health history, whatever, and she told me she's a glass blower. And I was like, what does that involve? And she's like, you go from this really hot area to this really cold, like freezer area, and it's like inferno level hot, right? Like we're melting glass. And she's like, and you're holding a long, heavy stick with molten lava, I don't know, molten glass, whatever it is on the end, and you're spinning it, well, very small, delicate wrist movements. And she's petite. She's like half my size. And I was like, how much do you like glass blowing? And she was like, I love it. It's my passion. It's my career, you know, and it's my craft. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to try my best to help you find a way to do this. And we were able to find a way that she has been able to continue to do her work and her craft and her career. But it has been, you know, it's finding those wins, finding those strategies and those successes. I think that's something that I'm just very, very driven to do. And I don't think I'd be as driven as a clinician if I hadn't experienced what it's like personally to have those wins and how much they mean to me.
Yeah. So you talked about your mom, and I think you glossed over it a little bit initially. And so I want to go back to that because I think that's an important part of your story. Can you share like what about your mom's experience shaped you, and like kind of get into that a little bit?
Yeah, so in my mom's case, so she felt a lump in her breast and she contacted her GP and had multiple appointments. It was something like 6 different interactions over a year and a half. And I was 17, about to turn 18 when this all started. I was 21 when she died. And I remember like her biggest regret was, Alex, I wish I'd complained more. I wish I'd spoken up for myself, because she kept being told it's menopause, it's anxiety. Oh, you're just busy. Oh, you're just stressed. You know, all these different things. And for me, I will always feel like she died not from triple negative breast cancer, but from medical gaslighting. If it had been caught early, her prognosis would have been so much better. And I'm furious about that. Like one time, a partner at the time, he was like, "So when are you going to stop being angry about your mom being dead?" I'm like, "When she's not dead, I guess." Like, I don't know. What do you want me to say? Like, I'm not happy about this. So
Yeah.
so that was how that all played down. And the hard thing was she did the right things. She went to her doctor. She repeated. In her case in Canada, she was not technically eligible. And again, I'm not an expert in current Canadian healthcare. I haven't really lived there in 13 years. So if the guidelines have changed, I don't know about them. But back then, she had had her mammogram, like what she was entitled to. And she was being told, oh, well, you don't get one for another like 2 years or however, 3 years or however many years it was for her at that point. And it really is difficult because in some countries, like Canada, it's hard, like you're kind of stuck with, you get what you get. And it's hard to get
Yeah.
second opinions. And no country has a perfect healthcare system. I can say this from having worked with patients in many different countries at this point through online consultations. But I can say certainly that I prefer to be in a country where I have the option to at least pay for a private consultation and get that sorted now. And again, things in Canada have changed since then. I think you can access more healthcare that's paid for, but my heart breaks because my mom was stuck. She did everything right. And if she had known how serious it was, we would have found the money, driven to America, paid like $1,000 or whatever it is for an MRI there because it's like wild, the cost. But we didn't know what was going on at the time.
Yeah.
So that taught me the importance of advocating for myself.
Mhm.
I'm not great at it as a patient. It's like a secret shame. Like I cry at appointments. Like I don't go to appointments without my partner there. And I tell patients, I'm like, find the biggest man you can. He doesn't have to talk, doesn't have to be whatever. Just like stick him in the corner and just have him there. You know what I mean? Because my partner's like, why do I have to come with you? And I'm like, dude, I'm a woman. Like I'm not going to that appointment by myself. Okay. So
Yeah.
find, beg, borrow, or steal a large man if possible, or any man will do, to be honest. But yeah, basically, I learned the importance of power dynamics in clinic rooms. I wonder if my mom would have been treated differently if it was instead my dad going and complaining about a lump somewhere in his body. I'll always wonder that. And I also really learned the importance about appreciating that you are a person existing within a system. You are a patient in a system. And if you don't understand how that system works and you don't understand the guidelines for referrals or the limitations or constraints of insurance or whatever, like all these different rules, things are going to feel very confusing. So I became quite passionate about learning about the systems that affect my health and those of my patients.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. That's I feel like that's an all too common thing. It's probably no matter what country you're from, it's all too common, and it's interesting. I don't know if you while browsing you heard about I have these weird head issues that I've been dealing with, seeing like I don't know. It started in at the end of February, and it's getting better, but it hasn't gone away. And it's like, the amount of doctors that I've seen to try to figure it out is like pretty astronomical. And like, but yeah, it's a shame. I don't like, even in the private sector, I don't know what to do about that, like if, especially if you don't have the money, right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't have the money to pay for it, it's like you can go to a doctor that's in network in the United States, but like you're limited to that. Like, I've had people tell me to try acupuncture and other things like that. I know. I don't. I know it's an unconventional thing, but it's like, I'm shooting from the hip. I'll try anything to see if it gets better. And there's some things like that insurance doesn't cover, and it's like, okay, well, do I take the risk and spend my own money to maybe get a solution, or do I just keep going with the things that are in networks? So
Yeah, no, it's so difficult. Money is really the money to buy a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, or 10th opinion. That's what it opens up, is the door to being able
Yeah.
to see those other healthcare providers. I've had patients who are in financial brackets where they can fly to different countries and see specialists, right? So
Right.
healthcare, as much as it should be something that's available to all, and I really believe that, and we all deserve to have, health, basically. It is often dictated by what patients can access, and that can vary greatly. And the thing that's difficult is that private doesn't necessarily mean better. And this is a constant kind of tension in the UK as people think, oh, they ask, have you gone private? There are lots of medical doctors and healthcare providers who work in the private field who I would not pay to see,
Yeah.
to be entirely
Yeah.
honest. So private doesn't necessarily mean better. It just means that you are paying. And in systems like America, and again, I'm not an expert, every state is different. The American healthcare system, people could do, and I'm sure do, PhDs on just like the complexities of it. But
Yeah.
you're beholden to different insurers and rules and all of those things. So it's just, there are all these different ways that patients get stuck. What I can say that has helped me is my 2 university degrees. My first one was English literature. And I took a lot of philosophy courses and thought about logic a lot. And I briefly considered going into law, which led to that kind of path and way of thinking. My second degree, of course, was osteopathy. So obviously looking at muscles and joints and kind of biomechanics and how people move and exist within their musculoskeletal system. And for me, that exposure to one degree about thought processes and critical thinking, and one that was about really, the nuts and bolts of being a physical human and trying to navigate, that meat suit in space. For me, what that made clear to me as a clinician now, and as someone who's been a patient and whose family members have had very serious health issues occur, is just how important language is and communication. So if you're, with some of my patients where they only have the GP that they get on the NHS, we cannot access anyone else, we find ways as best we can to make that work. So that might be discussing differential diagnoses that haven't been considered. That might be discussing potential other investigations that may not have yet been done. That might be looking at how can we access treatment, through whatever part. Again, the NHS has different divisions as well. Healthcare is always complicated. It's a very complicated thing. But it's trying to find that path. It's trying to roll forward. And the patients who tend to have the best clinical outcomes, I find, are the ones who are able to, and it's not easy. Like, there are points where I've disengaged, as I said earlier. Like, it's not an easy thing to keep going when you're exhausted and you have health issues and you have pain. And the last thing you want to do is, look at whatever guidelines or try and figure out, what next step you can make. But if we can keep to a plan and a strategy and keep trying to cross things off the list, and if necessary, gently pressure people, say, okay, you're saying the lump in my breast is anxiety. What else could it be? Like that kind of, I say gentle questioning, but I had a friend once talk about just different ways that you can encourage people to think critically, because it's just critical thinking that they're neglecting to do sometimes. But that type of conversation skill is something patients often don't have, and nor should they be required to have it. Their healthcare providers should be theoretically, doing all of that legwork for them, but the reality is it doesn't often happen. So support with that is critical. It's something I try to provide my patients when I can within my scope. And I hope that for your injury, and I did see some of your discussion on some of your other episodes about it, that you're able to continue to roll forward, even if it's slowly in some way.
Yeah, I like the reference. Thank you. So what? That's so what? Going back to your EDS and the thing you mentioned a few things that have worked, but what else have you done for your EDS that have been like instrumental?
Yeah, so for my hypermobile EDS, and again, just because there's all these types and they're like all
Thank
so
you.
different, so it's okay,
Thank
no
you,
worries.
yeah.
I don't, no, you're trying your best, and it's the language is really hard. I just know there's been a lot of issues with kind of the rarer types not getting visibility, so I always try to say like make sure we're saying hEDS whenever possible. So for my hEDS, what has helped me? Let me share my solution toolkit, okay? So something that helped me a lot was building muscle, which sounds easy and is hard, okay? Because I see patients get referred to me and the rheumatologist is like, oh, they just need to build muscle. There's nothing just about it. It is a gargantuan task that is difficult because we're working with someone whose connective tissue literally behaves differently, and your muscles are connective tissue. Your musculoskeletal system is connective tissue essentially. but finding those bright spots. So for me, that looked like when I was starting out, and still with my patients, I will make exercise programs with 2 exercises or even 4, or sometimes just 1 if we're trying to find one single thing that doesn't injure a patient, that doesn't flare their symptoms, but where they say, hey, I feel that healthy, that nice feeling of my muscles working, right? Like finding some type of exercise that works for you is critical. There's a common trap that people fall into, which is where they think it has to be Pilates or it has to be non-weight bearing or whatever. It's critical to appreciate there is no current consensus on guidance for people with hEDS and HSD when it comes to exercise. There's no, if you do this, you get better. What there is there are certain agreed upon challenges. So for example, I think we were chatting earlier and you mentioned MMA or combat sports or whatever. We were talking about that briefly, but like any sort of contact sport scares me. I will not do contact sports. I'm not playing 5-a-side football or soccer. If you run at me, I'm running away from you. Like I will not do contact sports. Okay.
Don't worry. I will not be running at you.
Stay
being
away.
in a wheelchair.
I should have said you took the roll at me, but yes.
No. I'm just messing with you.
No. We stay any type of contact. I'm gonna run away or go as fast as I can in the other direction. Contact sports. Anywhere you can slip, ice, outside. It rains outside. I'm not doing anything outside. You know those boot camps where they're outside in the rain? I'm not doing that. I've ruptured both my quads. What else am I going to rupture now? We're not taking that risk. So again, I know I seem precious, but I just have to say, you know who the most precious people are? Professional athletes. They're often they're like, I'm not going to go skiing. I'm not going to do this. I've got to prepare. You know, I have my competition. So I like to kind of mentally role play in that space of being like a professional athlete. I'm not, but I just treat my body as though it was worth like £1 million because it's the only one I have and it seems to work pretty well. Basically, being cautious with exercise. We spoke about tennis as well. I think you coach tennis, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Wheelchair tennis. Yeah. So that for me, that's a jarring movement. That's one of the key things which aggravates my shoulder symptoms. So I would be cautious. Like if I was your tennis student, I would be developing strength. I'd be asking if we could start very, very carefully. You know, I'd be asking to look at how my shoulder blade is moving. Like it's kind of that respect of movement. And also you have to react. So a reactive sport is different, you know, where I'm reacting to you hitting a ball at me versus a sport where I'm getting to choose when I move and how. So reactive sports, I can't plan my movements out as carefully, and that's higher risk in my opinion. So those are the type of things that learning about why they cause me issues has been helpful. I do a lot of high risk activities. People who go on my social media will see them, but they're high risk kind of strength training things. So I'm in control. I've done heavy Olympic weightlifting movements and different things, but I can drop the barbell if I don't feel safe. So that's kind of, for me, how I treat risk in my body. In terms of other things, so manual therapy, not all of it is created equal. To be clear, I have no affiliation with Active Release Techniques as a company. I've just taken their courses, but learning about like that way of treating injuries through manual treatment really helped me. It was the first thing that improved my wrist pain I had after a fracture. So just appreciating that just because you've had manual therapy, it doesn't mean like you've experienced every different type. There are many, many different types of manual therapy. Because I was ready to be done with, you know, the whole field, physio, osteopathy, whatever. When I was like 16, I was like, this is stupid. It's making my symptoms worse. I'm done with it. And I didn't appreciate how varied it can be. That type of manual therapy, self-treatment strategies. So I teach my patients whenever possible, self-massage or joint mobilizations or things they can do if they can reach it. And luckily, because they're hypermobile, they can often reach a lot of things. But certainly like that has helped a lot. As well, appreciating skills. So some patients find taping helpful. I get hives from tape, so I don't tape that much myself personally, but teaching patients how they can tape safely and, you know, how it needs to be removed and these types of things. It's like I'm giving them ways that they can affect their body and feel in control. Yeah.
Hold on. So you said taping.
Yeah.
And I assume that's just the literally sticky tape.
No, sports tape.
Yeah, so like athletic tape, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and you get hives from that, but you don't from duct tape.
Yeah,
from when
I
you
don't seem to. I
swam.
don't understand it. Yeah, I never got hives really from duct tape. I don't know. Maybe
Interesting.
it's a
Okay.
magic adhesive ingredient.
Okay.
I've never looked
Yeah,
into that further.
because when you said taping and you get hives, I immediately thought about you swimming and putting duct
Yeah.
tape on your feet.
I think your toes get, my toes, I think I was in the pool, so water would have affected the adhesive, and toes always get a bit sweaty. So maybe the sweat like made the tape come off easily or not bind as much. I don't
Yeah.
know. I have no idea.
And
Yeah.
and when you say taping, does that mean like like I see boxers a lot, or just fighters in general? They'll wrap their wrists to make it so that it's a little bit more durable and stuff like that. Is that the kind of taping you're talking
So
about?
I would classify that if are they using fabric or tape for that?
Both.
Okay, so
They'll maybe tape first and then they'll use the fabric.
so the taping, I'd classify that as taping. I don't teach that technique. I'm not familiar with
Sure.
it, but certainly like applying tape to your shoulder joint if you're finding it's falling forward and you want it to stay back, or applying tape to your knees. So I would put some tape on the outside of my kneecap so they don't go sideways, basically, if I'm doing fitness competition or something, some shenanigans, some fitness stuff, whatever stuff I'm pushing myself too hard with. But those little strategies can really, really help. When it comes to the fabric wrist straps, those are something. So again, my work is very affected by my previous experience with athletes. And things like fabric wrist straps really helped me because my wrists are some of the most hypermobile joints in my body. And there's something where I would get a lot of pain doing handstands or receiving a barbell or, doing a push overhead with a weight. So having braces I can wear. And in my case right now, it's only when I'm exercising. I'm someone who doesn't really use braces or mobility aids on a day-to-day basis as much, just because right now I don't need to. I may in future, but right now it's not the case. But developing, like having those braces, regardless of whether they're more like serious orthopedic prescribed rigid brace or something as mild as like a wrist wrap, those help people move with reduced injury in some cases. So yeah, those all help. There are more things if you don't mind me keeping going.
Please,
Okay.
Yeah, let's
Cool.
go.
And this is like the solution oriented thing I talk about. My whole life has been built around my connective tissue. Like it's kind of wild when you think about it. But for example, I have a very expensive cooking device called a Thermomix. It was expensive and I appreciate that. But it's a heated blender. So it's like a stainless steel blender that heats up. And you can say, I want to make a stew. I take a carrot, like snap it in half over my knee, put it in, press it, it goes brrr, and it chopped it. So I've had a long day at clinic. I don't want to strain the joints in my hand even more. I don't want to use a knife. And yes, knife skills help. Knife quality helps and sharp blades, but I'm very precious about my hands, just like maybe the piano player who needs to perform at a concert. They might also be really precious about their hands, right? So for me, devices in the kitchen, which do work for me, help massively. I have orthostatic hypotension, which is a type of orthostatic intolerance, and kind of similar to POTS. Basically, it's just a different version where my blood pressure doesn't behave as it should when I move from sitting to standing. And with the Thermomix, I can put food in, lie down on the couch, and then it goes beep when the next step of the recipe needs to be done. So I don't have to stand there stirring it. So that saves my life. Sorry, I'm pen. I shouldn't be fidgeting with stuff.
Sorry.
I bought a pair of pneumatic compression boots 10 years ago or something because I was working with professional athletes back then, and they had these Normatec boots, and I would be doing 12-hour days, such long work days. And I said, can I use these boots? I would always be obsessed with the boots. And they were like, Alex, why are you obsessed with these boots? And I was like, they take the heavy feeling in the legs away. And they were just what are you talking about? I was obsessed with them. And now I know that I have blood pooling as a consequence of my dysautonomia. So blood doesn't return from my feet and my legs as reliably as it should in someone who's not affected by hEDS and dysautonomia. So the boots, they squeeze you sequentially from your toes all the way up your legs. And if I have a really long day at clinic or I have really aching legs, those help me. Now, those were something unbelievable, like 700 pounds back in the day, but I was so obsessed with them. I got like every penny I could, I was living in not the best accommodation at the time. Like these boots were my treasure, the apartment's on fire. I'm going to grab my boots with me. Right.
Yeah.
But I was just like, they're one of those aids. And again, people wouldn't classify them probably as like a disability aid, but they helped me do the work that I was doing at the time. And they still help me, which involves a lot of standing. And they don't fix anything, but they do take away the pain to an extent so I can sleep, which is great.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so many little things built into my life that just help me function. And they're things that I forget about a lot of the time, because you're not going to look at someone who has a Thermomix and Normatec boots and be like, oh, like she has a disability. You're going to be like, oh, she likes fancy things in her home, apparently.
Yeah.
But they really are things which like help me massively. And it goes back again to my passion for finding things that are either very cost accessible, like self-taping, self-massage, all these things that people can do if they're in positions where they can't access some of those more expensive things sometimes, as well as sometimes an expensive thing if it's worth it for someone. It can make a big difference to quality of life, and everyone's different.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Any other symptoms treatments, things that have helped?
Surgeries.
So
I've had multiple major surgeries that have made a massive difference to my quality of life. My jaw surgery, they cut through my upper jaw entirely, my maxilla, and they cut through, I intentionally broke, my lower jaw to move it forward. And I'm grateful I had that surgery. Now, that's a major surgery, and I'm not telling anyone they should have it. It was like unhinged. It was wild that I went through with that. I was 16. I probably wasn't thinking that much, my frontal cortex wasn't probably fully developed. But like I said earlier, I had all those issues with eating and basic activities of daily living. So that jaw surgery, as much as it led to that complication of that bone infection, I think that overall it's been a net positive in the sense that I can eat food and function now, which is great. And my eye surgery, people who haven't had eye surgery, or who haven't had eye issues, I should say, or serious vision issues, they don't realize how disabling it is. Like everyone's they don't appreciate, like glasses are a disability aid, like they are a necessary, just highly prevalent disability aid for many people. And for me, when I was at my most disabled, it was when I couldn't get up off the couch because my glasses, basically the prescription was so strong that it couldn't reconcile the vision from the side with my vision in front of me. So I would get nausea, like I'd be sick. I don't know why my brain couldn't deal with that. I think because the script was -10 basically. But I was at a point in my life, I wouldn't go see friends. I wouldn't leave the house. Like that's how I played The Witcher 3 so many times through, because I just couldn't get up because I was in so much I was falling over at the tube station when I tried to leave the house. Like I was worried for my own personal safety to an extent. Yeah. So being able to access
Can I just say?
Yeah, tell me.
You just said tube station?
Yeah.
That's TV, right?
No. It's the underground.
Oh, the tube station in Witcher 3. Okay.
Yeah,
I was just thinking like you're living in the UK.
I know.
Like, wait, this is maybe like a different terminology for American versus UK.
And my Canadian accent doesn't help either. So I just recorded my audiobook, and the producer, he's like, you have a Canadian accent, but you say British things, but it's all weird. And sometimes you say Canadian things. I'm like, I don't know where I am or what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But no, I would try to leave the house. So I'd put on my glasses and I'm like, I'm going to leave the house today. And by the way, and this goes back to disability, like when you have to prepare, like your life depends on it to leave the house, you have to pack like, I don't know, medication and this and this and this and your glasses and blah, blah, blah in a bag and like everything. And it's like a big deal. And you make these plans far in advance. That might be a sign that you have some chronic health issues.
Yeah, right.
It was a sign,
Maybe.
but I was... Yeah, maybe. But I would like get ready like my life depended on it. And then I would just be it's like I would try and go upstairs, but I just couldn't visually process like where the stairs were. And then I would fall. And this happened twice. And I had gone from being a relatively physically capable person to someone who all of a sudden was falling over at the tube station and people were offering to help me all the time, and the nausea that I'd have from the vision issues as well was quite bad. So for me, I had the implantable Collamer lens surgery where they make a small incision in your eye and insert a contact lens. And it was like the heavens opened, because after a 20-minute procedure, I could see nearly perfectly. And I have to say, like, I don't think the improvement I've had would have been possible without that surgery, because I couldn't exercise like I do now. I would get horrific headaches from taking medical histories. Like doing this podcast, chatting with you, looking at a screen would have given me horrific headaches of disabling intensity. So for me, that surgery was truly a life-changing event. And one other thing we haven't touched on was I met the diagnostic criteria for PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome, now called PMOS. And I had this argument with my GP, because at this point I'm an osteopathy student, and I pull up the guidelines. I'm like, I'm going to bring the diagnostic criteria so we can have a grown-up discussion, the two of us. So I'm there, and I have my test results, and I had the elevated blood markers that they were looking for as part of the diagnostic criteria at the time, which I think is still in use. And I also had long anovulatory cycles, clearly documented, clearly evidenced. And although I didn't have the cysts on my ovaries, those are not required for the diagnosis. So I'm there, I'm like 24, and I'm like, I meet the criteria. And then she's like, you're too skinny to have PCOS. And I was like, but weight does not appear on the criteria. And she was like, but you just don't have it. You don't look like you have it. And I was like, but I meet the criteria. So it's just like you're talking to a wall. And then she was like, do you want hormonal birth control? And I'm like, you can't give me that because my medical history is contraindicating your ability to give me that because my history of cancer and stroke in my family. So it just ended up in this like absurd discussion of pointlessness. But in my case, and again, I'm not an expert in PCOS or, hormonal conditions, like those should really be dealt with ideally by endocrinologists. But in my personal case, as someone who couldn't afford healthcare at the time, I was lucky in that seemingly over time, some dietary changes and exercise and various lifestyle adaptations seem to have affected my cycles to a point where they're on the longer end of normal. And I have regular ovulations, which keeps my hormonal profile in balance. And I feel infinitely better than I did when I had PCOS or PMOS.
Yeah. Interesting.
Which was never officially diagnosed. But yeah, that's my story with that. So that really helped. Hormonal health is important. That's my statement.
Yeah. 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 They're looking at my hormonal health for my head issues as well. So
yeah, it's something that can affect a lot of people. So my partner won't mind me saying this. He's a male and he has Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And it was a very clear example to me of how hormones can affect you massively, because I would just see him sometimes have so much fatigue. It's like he shuts down. When your computer just like crashes? I would see this person when his symptoms were not as well managed and his condition was not as well managed. It was like he would shut down. And these types of hormonal conditions are not appreciated enough in men, especially because it is mostly women who get Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is something I think which is often overlooked as well, and which can affect people's health. And again, I'm not an expert here, but I believe it would be classified as a metabolic syndrome. But it's something where it's certainly underappreciated and it can make you feel pretty crummy. So yeah, those are two conditions which I see a lot in my patients and which I care about getting assessed and treated, because how can I help a patient with neck pain, let's say, if they have undiagnosed, untreated non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and they have Hashimoto's thyroiditis and they have like PMOS? We're fighting an uphill battle already with the hypermobility, and you add these co-occurring conditions on top and it's like we're trying to climb up an icy hill.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, I hope you get some answers for all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So I want to move on to really bad jokes,
Yes.
but, I'd like to take a small break.
If you don't hate me, you can have me back one day, as long as we can talk about video games again.
Right. Yeah, there we go. We'll just do an episode talking about The Legend of Zelda.
Please. Yeah, did you ever play The Witcher or God of War? What are your RPGs?
So I've never played God of War, and I tried The Witcher, but I think I tried The Witcher after I played Breath of the Wild, and I was like, I want another RPG that's like this, because I'm obsessed.
The Witcher's dark. Yeah. Velen is like a hard place. Dave couldn't get through Velen either. It was a dark place.
So I probably played, I don't know, a good 10, 20 hours into The Witcher 3, and it was like the controls are clunkier and stuff like that. And I think I would have loved it if I would have played it like when it came out. But I couldn't get into it. So
The controls haven't aged well, but God of War is beautiful. Please, God
Okay.
of War
Okay.
2018 and then Ragnarok, like best games. The fight mechanics, you'll love them so much. It's
Okay.
just, and God of War, the first one, it's good. And then you get this thing in the middle, and I can't say what it is, but something happens, and then it takes it. You're just like, your jaw will drop, and you're just like,
Okay.
oh my God, how is this so incredible? So, like, God of War Ragnarok, or God of War, the first one, 2018.
I have had my sights set on playing God of War, but it's like one of those things where it's like, again, addictive personality. Like when I play a
Yeah.
video game, I just go all in, and it's like, oh, I can do that later, and it's like,
Yeah.
fire drill and stuff like that.
That's
So
Dave's.
it's like,
Dave's the same way. I have like the least addictive personality ever. Like I'll have a chocolate bar in the cupboard. I forget about it. And then like
Yeah.
a month later, I'm like, oh no, like, this shouldn't leave food out. So
Yeah.
I appreciate your struggle. I have no tips for you. I'm sorry.
yeah, yeah, no. Just avoid is the best
Yeah.
practice that I have.
Christmas
avoid,
time.
avoid.
This is what
Yeah.
the holidays are for.
Yeah. I told my friends when both Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild came out, I was like, guys, don't expect to hear from me for a couple months. Like,
I would respect that so much. Have you played It Takes Two? Do you couch co-op?
yes, I love that one.
Can we? Okay, It Takes Two, the first one, the elephant.
Wait,
Dude,
is there a second?
Yeah, well, there's a second one called Split Fiction, which is. Have you not played Split Fiction?
No, I haven't.
That was my whole Christmas. So I don't have family in the UK. We just kind of do our own thing. So like we pounded that game. Like we were just playing it like 8 hours a day for like a couple of days. Split Fiction is really good. I don't think it has the creative genius to the same level of It Takes Two, because It Takes Two is kind of like disturbing, and I
Yeah.
like it for that, because you know
It
the
is.
elephant. Like I'm not gonna say it,
Yeah.
but you're like not. You know what I
No,
mean when I say.
yeah, I know.
Yeah. I'm
What-
traumatized by that.
We're recording, but
That's
I'll
fine.
edit this part out.
No, I can
just
stay in.
'cause-
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Or take
okay.
it out. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just a little weird. Like, it's a weird transition coming back from break and being like video games. So I don't know.
Have me on
I'll
another
check
time.
it out and see like I'll edit the bathroom break out and then see like what it looks like. So.
Do whatever you want to do. It's totally fine.
Yeah. I was gonna say something else. Oh, but so I played it with my friend, and we were like, oh, you gotta go, make the daughter cry, and you gotta do something to the elephant. And the entire time we were thinking like, we're gonna get there, and then there's gonna be a twist, and nothing's gonna happen, and then it's like, now we gotta drag the elephant, like, and it's like, what is going on?
And it's with the elephant. Okay, so we're not publishing this. That's fine. The elephant's like, please, like, don't hurt me, and I'm just like, oh my God, like that.
It's so
That
messed
game-
up.
I know. I'm like concerned for the people who made that game. So Split Fiction is much less disturbing, and I would
Okay.
say some of the gameplay is better. And there are some levels that are like, because it's like little mini stories. Some of the levels are A++. The other ones are like a B-. Like they're still good,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah.
I like the guy in Split Fiction. I thought he was hilarious. There was the guy and the wife, right? The characters in Split Fiction are kind of like annoying in my opinion, but the gameplay is really good. So play Split Fiction,
Yeah.
you will love it. It's about AI and art, and like if you like It Takes Two, you will like
love
it's Split Fiction. 100%.
Have you played Unraveled?
I did, but we like it. I couldn't get into it so much. Like it was
Really?
kind
Okay.
of. Does it
Did
get
you
more
play it
exciting
after or before you played It Takes Two?
after?
Yeah, so It Takes Two is just an incredible game, and
Yeah, and like the
it's
aggressive
like,
pace.
yeah, it's like it takes Unraveled is like the almost the retro version of It Takes Two. But yeah, I really liked it, like the puzzle levels and stuff like that. I mean, I played through 1 and 2 and I really liked it, and I got suggestions for It Takes Two. I was not really a fan initially of the storyline of It Takes Two.
Yeah.
But
oh yeah, the storyline is weird and messed
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
And it's too
like,
long. It gets
man.
boring.
Mm-hmm. And then the book. Screw the book.
With what I was gonna say was the Unraveled reminds me of OG Newgrounds games. So I was on Newgrounds back in the day. I don't know if you played Flash games. Okay. So I dated a guy who was an animator on Newgrounds games, and like that was like ASDF like Spacebar games and like Super Meat Boy and stuff. Like so I was
okay.
that's kind of, I've had like a long history of gaming and life, but yeah, it was a very like peaceful kind of puzzle game, and I love the chaos of It Takes Two and Split Fiction. One
Yeah.
thing, don't buy Reanimal. I was very disappointed in it. It's a new couch co-op.
Reanimal. Okay.
Yeah, the artistry looks really cool, and it could have been so good. But you know when people are all like hoity-toity and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna make it like so deep. I'm not gonna put a story, blah blah blah," and it's like you're just lazy. This is trash. So don't get Reanimal.
Okay. Noted. All right. You ready to get back into things?
I'm ready.
Okay, it is time for our wheelie bad jokes. Here's how it works: is I'm going to read a wheelie bad joke. I have the books from Logan Lyle. He's on Instagram. He's an awesome, just tells a whole bunch of dad jokes and all that. So I'm going to read it and then try to recite it out loud without actually reading it as I tell the joke. And then I want you to rate the joke on a scale of 1 to 10. And then if you have one, which talking before the podcast, you do have one, and I want you to do the same thing. So, okay, let me read this again. Okay, this is going to be too long for me to remember, but okay. So I saw a man going up a hill with a trolley full of 4-leaf clovers, rabbit feet, and horseshoes. I thought, wow, that guy's pushing his luck.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I like that one.
I like
that
it.
one. How would you rate that one? Scale of 1 to 10.
Okay, for like being a like corny joke, I'm gonna
Yeah.
give it a 6 because it had a story, it had a narrative, it got me kind of into it. I had to dock some points because like I know rabbit's feet make people sad. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it was like like Lucky Charms cereal. He should have had that instead or something. But I understand maybe he was like a traditional person who wanted the rabbit's feet. So I would say 6 out of 10.
Yeah. Okay. I would probably rate it among the better ones that I've read. I'll rate it. I'll rate it a 7. So
Okay, it's like it's solid. It's not bad.
yeah. It's solid. And I like the. I guess the double. I like the ones that have the double meaning. Pushing his luck is like he's pushing the trolley and luck involved. But okay, so you have one.
I do.
Okay, let's hear it.
So my friend asked, "How does cloning work?" And I said, "That makes 2 of us."
That's good. So I would probably rate that around the same. I do like it. It's a clever one.
I'd rate it
maybe
higher.
maybe slightly below. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
I-
What's your rating for your joke?
Like an 8.
By the way, this joke was also from the Logan Lyle joke book. So
Yeah.
you
I can't
rated
wait
an
to
8.
look at all of them. I'm
I know, right?
sold on it.
There's there's 2 books, and I'm just looking. It's like one of the books is like 167 pages, 69, 100, 189. So there's a lot, and every single page. Some of the pages have like a picture on it, like this one has a joke and a picture, but they're good. I like most of them. They're not like that. I've never read one that I'm like, oh, that's stupid. Like I just don't find that funny, but I like dad jokes. So
The world needs more humor.
yeah,
Can I tell you like a joke?
yes,
It's kind
please.
of it's okay. So it's a little bit. I don't. It's from real life. Okay, so I think it's funny, but it's in a dark situation. But sometimes we need humor in dark situations as well.
I agree.
think we absolutely do. So, and my mom would be so happy this is on the podcast. So anyways, basically when my mom was passing away, so she was really, really unwell at this point, right? So we were really lucky that we got to care for her at home. And my dad and myself and the palliative care doctor and like the nurse, we were all there, right? Having a chat. And we had to go out. I had to go out and do something, maybe work. My dad had to go out. The nurse and doctor had to go out. So we were trying to coordinate our schedules just to make sure my mom wasn't alone, understandably. So it's like, we're all chatting about that. And she just pipes up and she's like, "Don't worry, I'll still be here when you get back." I was just like, because she wasn't, yeah, she was not ambulatory at that time. She was not moving. She said that like for a laugh, and like everyone just like laughed, because it was like the delivery was just so spot on. And for me, you know how there are those moments that you treasure and you get this weird clarity sometimes at certain points in your life, but like people, I think, sometimes have this weird way they look on people who are dealing with serious illness things as like, almost with this weird sort of like, they get nervous around them and they either privilege them or feel pity for them or whatever. And it's like, my mom was just like, her sense of humor was just always there, and it was sharpest sometimes in the darkest times. So that is a joke that's very close to my heart.
I like it. So do you know any EDS or hEDS type jokes? Have you ever heard any?
I don't. There's one comedian that I know one of my friends saw in Scotland, I think, who has hEDS and talks about it. I'm not sure though. I could be imagining that, but it's something which affects the creative industries a lot, because we get a big overlap with neurodivergence and hEDS and HSD. So we will see some, and it's on TikTok already and Instagram. We're seeing people out there for sure. Do you have any?
Ellie was listening to I think the podcast with Lola, and I was asking her about hEDS jokes, and she sent me this shirt that's orange, and it's something you wear around Halloween, and it says, "Hocus pocus, my joints are bogus."
I like that one. I like that.
I like that. Yeah. So anyway,
for me, it's like,
go on. No, you first.
No, it's just it's like those moments where if you don't laugh, you'll cry. You know what I mean? Yeah, so it's like, for me, it's just those silly, it's like those little things. Okay, so this isn't a joke, but this is kind of funny. So one of my patients, she kept getting injured because she got with her friends holding pint glasses, and pint glasses in the UK are quite big. And when people have hypermobile hands, that the weight of the beverage in the glass can exacerbate the injury. So anyways, we got to the point where she was like drinking a beer with a straw. Like, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. Lots of people with disabilities do that, but it was just the solution to her not injuring her hand was so simple, but it was something that was so different that her friends in her, her friend group, which primarily consisted of non-disabled people, they were like, why do you need a straw? like this is too heavy, or this is too big for you? Like, what's going on with you? So yeah, it's just like these little things. People think they're quirky, and they are sometimes, but they're also accessibility and important, and just ways of navigating life for sure.
So it's interesting because like humor is a big part of my life. It's a big part of my disability. I think something maybe different from my perspective than, let's say, yours is my disability is visual. And yes, yours does show up visually from time to time, I'm sure. But one of the things that I feel is that with anybody that I meet for the first time, I feel like there's an elephant in the room of like some people have never been around disability and all that, and they just don't know how to act. And so one of the things that I've made a point to do in my life is to very initially crack jokes about my disability so that they know that it's not that serious. Like for me, like if they do something that's weird that they shouldn't do around disability people, I'm not gonna like freak out or anything like that. I'm, let's say, forgiving, and then that opens people up to start asking me about my disability and like maybe my limitations and stuff like that, because I know it's frowned upon to ask someone that you've just met what their disability is, because you don't know what kind of trauma they've been through, right? But for me, I have no problem talking about it, and part of the way that I do it is to crack jokes. And I said one earlier is like something like, if you run after me, and I just cracked the joke of like, don't worry, being in a wheelchair. So yeah. So I love cracking jokes like that. But in the EDS world, it's a little bit more hidden though, isn't it?
I think humor always really depends on the context, right? So that's why historical humor, like humor from ancient Rome, is harder for us to understand today, because we weren't there. We weren't in the room and the environment where it was being made. And I think we always need to think as well of art, and humor, of course, comedy is a type of art. And that whole idea of like, there's the author, there's the art itself, and there's the audience and how it's received and viewed. So I think when it comes to humor, a lot of it is situation dependent. Like I heard an episode where you were talking with someone else on the show about, how do you feel if someone calls you, I think you said a cripple, and then they were like, well, it's okay if it's my friend or something, you know what I mean? And it's all those different boundaries. And so I think when it comes to humor with HEDS and HSD, it really depends on just that situation and how well you know the person and their vibe, and that can be certainly difficult to gauge. I'm very grateful for my friends in this community. Like I have some friends where I can talk to them about like stuff that's, sometimes a bit awkward or embarrassing, but I can make jokes about it and it's how I cope with it. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that they don't, become awkward back at me, or that they like laugh sometimes if I manage to get to a point where I've actually said something funny. So it's, I think humor is it's critical. That being said, it's certainly difficult on social media to do humorous content, I think sometimes, because understandably people may engage with that content at different points in their journey or from different experiences or backgrounds, and it may not land or it may hurt someone. So I think it's something where it's difficult to navigate online, certainly. When it comes to like jokes and kind of setting the tone in the room, I think that's a great thing if someone feels confident, like obviously you do, in terms of using jokes just to set that energy, set the stage kind of, for what you're okay with or what you're not. Because as well, I can say like, I'm lucky in my work that I get to speak with people about their disabilities all the time. So I'm so aware because of my work. But if I didn't have my work, I wouldn't be as aware. And then that would impact my ability to speak with and connect with people who are so cool. Like I have some patients who have some disability, and that doesn't, it's a part of who they are. But for me, what's so cool is like how their brain works, like what they're thinking, what they're saying, what they're doing in their life. Like that's what I find so interesting about them as a person. And I'm so grateful that I am able to just know how to communicate for the most part with people who are disabled and have disabilities, just because I've been exposed to that. I will say my mom was she was involved in retirement homes from an early age as like a marketing director. So I was age 12 running around a retirement home while my mom was finishing work. And I was just like, I loved the grab bars. Like I just love grab bars. I think they should be everywhere. I loved the accessibly designed kitchens and like the wider hallways and the ramps. Like accessible design was normalized to me from such a young age that it just became why doesn't every home have this? This is amazing.
Right.
So, hopefully we can continue to just get more exposure, whether it's through, people like such as yourself who feel comfortable and okay talking with people, or through people like me just kind of incidentally almost being exposed to it. I think that's one of the ways we can make the world a better place for everyone and for people with disabilities.
Yeah.
I will say too, it's easy to talk about things. It's harder to do things. And what I mean by that is I haven't talked as much online about Disability Pride Month as perhaps I should have. It's hard to be online all the time. It's hard as well when you're someone who's navigating your own relationship with labels and identities and everything. Some people are dedicated disability advocates. I'm not. I'm just a clinician who tries to help my patients with HEDS and HSD and muscle and joint pain. But what I can say, because of, again, my early exposure through my mom's work, through my mom's disability, she couldn't use her legs after the cancer spread and different things. I was exposed to the importance of accessibility from a very early age. And what I'm very proud of is the fact that I have never worked in a clinic which was inaccessible. I have always had wheelchair accessibility, even though it's really difficult in London to find premises that are wheelchair accessible. I have always had gender neutral bathroom facilities, which is very important to me for my clinical work, and disabled, bathrooms that wheelchairs can fit into. Again, very difficult in London. And in terms of my book, I'm really proud that I prioritize doing an audiobook, because there are some people where, for whatever accessibility reason, including visual issues, like they need that audiobook. And sometimes it comes at a cost to me as a business owner financially. Audiobooks don't produce themselves. You have to pay producers and people to edit them and so on. But it makes me happier with who I am as a person, a human being, and a professional, that I try to prioritize meaningful accessibility to my clinical work whenever I possibly can.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you said about So you said something along the lines of, with humor, you don't want to offend somebody or something along those lines. And that makes total sense, you being in the professional world. For me, it was interesting because the words that popped up in my head for me instantly was "I don't care," and that's not to say that as a uncompassionate person. That's more. And I had this conversation a lot on the podcast. Is like, we live in a world right now where I think we're trying to teach people about like certain words to say and stuff like that, and like none of the conversation is directed at the person that is that is offended by the word, right?
Yeah.
And so like the reason I my first thought was I don't care is if someone's offended by a joke that I say that's just supposed to be humor about disability, that's a them problem, not a me problem. And so I don't know. I mean, it could be a me problem as well, because maybe it is insensitive, but like part of me is like, listen, this is how I want to respond to my own disability, and if you don't like it, that's fine. It's just not for you. You don't have to follow my channel or do anything like that.
No, absolutely. I think for me, I just get a lot of anxiety related to this. Also, I think Canadians culturally, we're very like sensitive.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you heard of like a four-way stop in Canada? We call it a Canadian standoff when four cars come to a four-way stop.
No, you go. No, you go.
You just wave at each other. Like, so again, culture affects comedy in relationship to humor. But look, I fully agree in that, like, it's like food. How boring would the world be if we only made food that everyone liked? What are we going to have at the restaurants? We're going to have nothing. I want restaurants to serve food that I hate because someone else might like it, you know? So I think with humor, we get to the same point where if we have this, the problem with social media is it reduces everything and everything. We have to get down to this common denominator. And I want the world to be a beautiful, varied place with voices that I agree with and voices that make me laugh and voices that maybe even I don't feel comfortable with, but I can see how someone else might enjoy them. Like, I think it's important. I just, as someone who's created for content for a long time, it's hard now. It's a difficult thing. And it's partly like how much, how do you feel about yourself and how can you, it comes down to that anxiety thing. I think issue I mentioned earlier. It's a difficult thing for me to navigate personally, but we need varied opinions and views, and humor needs to be different to be funny. If you say the same thing as everyone else, it's not going to be funny.
Yeah. I agree. But the other thing, out of all the jokes that I've ever told, I think I have a past just being in a wheelchair, right? Like I've never really had somebody be offended. Oh, I did have somebody, like I used to have, let my friends in high school call me a cripple. And one of my friends, where we were at the lunch table in high school, yelled, "Shut up, cripple!" And I think that's hysterical. I'm a big like human behavior perspective. I'm not saying to anybody, by the way, listening, to go out and call your disabled friend a cripple.
Yeah, don't
like
do
that's yeah, right. But I always find like just different social interactions fascinating by how people react and stuff like that. And there's this one girl that was really offended on my behalf that my friend called me a cripple. And so I like she and I talked, and she goes, "Why do you let him call you that?" I'm like, "'Cause it's funny." And she goes, "Well, I don't think you're a cripple." And I just looked down and then looked back up at her. I was like, "You might want to get your eyes checked."
No, I fully. I appreciate that.
This was high school. When I say that, and like now to somebody, maybe I wouldn't have that much. That much disregard. Like she was doing, like trying to look out for me, and I appreciate that and all that. But anyway.
It becomes kind of infantilizing though when people, like, you know what I mean, when they're trying to look out for you, like you're clearly fine with it. Dave has a friend who's tetraplegic, and his friend destroys him on COD all the time. Like, Dave is a person whose hands work just fine. Dave has no excuse for not being better at COD than he is, but his friend who's playing adaptive is just like, they will say things back and forth to each other which are appropriate for them to say. I would not call him I would not use a word like that in that situation. But like, he has a sense of humor with his buddies, which just involves the language that they're choosing to use or reclaim or whatever, right? And like, as long as he's cool, then it's cool, so it's a situational thing. When I first like heard some of the jokes, I was like, like, okay, but that's how people cope with things. If you don't laugh, then sometimes life becomes harder. So I appreciate it.
I will say too, it's like, I have the choice that I could be offended by, say the word cripple, but like, why would I want to give somebody that power over me? It's like, I think I've said this multiple times on other podcasts, but if someone just randomly, like a person on the street called me a cripple to try to be offensive and derogatory, I would laugh. I'd be like, okay, like, you're right. Like, I don't know. Like, it's like, it's just one of those things. But okay, let's move on. So I want to move on to you becoming an osteopath. And so you've pretty much already described what an osteopath does, what you do, but why, you have two majors, it sounds like. You got an English lit.
Yeah, so I did an undergraduate degree, a 4-year undergraduate degree in English language and literature. So I specialized in that in North America, in the degree system there. Now, as you'll know, if you've done a university degree in North America as well, you can do minors and stuff. So I did a minor in classical studies, which was kind of random. I was thinking of going to medical school at the time, so I took human physiology and biology as my elective. So I had a very weird kind of undergraduate degree. I then did, so that's a separate Bachelor of Arts. That's the degree classification. I then did a separate, what I would classify as an undergraduate degree. Here it's technically a master's, but it's not the same as doing a 4-year undergrad plus 2-year master's or whatever in North America. So I think they call it an integrated master's. I don't know. I did a 4-year osteopathy degree in the UK, which is classified as a master's of osteopathy, which allows me to work professionally with my professional registration as an osteopath. So yeah, I've done 8 years of university. My brother just finished his PhD in mathematics. So for 8 years, I could have probably done other things, but instead I have essentially 2 undergraduate degrees, but in very interesting fields that I think are very interconnected.
Yeah, interesting. And so did you always want to do osteopathy?
No.
Yeah.
If you told me I was going to work in healthcare, I would have cried. If I was 16, you told me that, are you kidding me? I didn't want to be here. No. So I was very unhappy with the physio. My mom was always like, you should be a physio. You should work in healthcare. And again, I don't want anyone to say I'm conflating physiotherapy and osteopathy. What I will say, and I have this in my book, is there is more in common between good musculoskeletal healthcare professionals. So a good physio, a good osteo, even a good chiropractor. Some do exist. I know people have very strong feelings about different professions in this world, okay? But people who specialize in the musculoskeletal system, if they're using manual therapy and rehabilitative exercise, there will often be more in common than differences in the ones who are good at what they do. So if I did have a serious injury, there's an osteopath I'd see in Berlin. There's a chiropractor. If I had the money, I'd fly to him in California. And there's a physio in the Netherlands. So that just goes to show you, like, for me, it's more about how the professional works than what it says on their actual license or professional registration. But what I can say is I ended up through my journey, so the haze of grief after losing my mom, I had an increase in my symptoms, so they got worse. I ended up having some kind of like random serendipitous almost treatment of my wrist by someone who specialized in active release techniques, which is the type of manual therapy I do today. By the way, what I like about active release techniques is they force you to recertify. So every 2 years, little old me, doesn't matter how old I get, I have to go in front of examiners and show that I know what I'm doing. Most manual therapy certifications do not require you to recertify. And if they do, it's like an online quiz. Every 2 years, you have to go and do an exam. I get sweaty. I get nervous. Like, it feels like being a little kid again, you know? So there are different standards in different professions. And that's why I do respect the active release techniques kind of certification, why I'm very proud to be certified in it. But I was treated with that, and I was like, wow, that actually helped it. Because I was a very skeptical, angry, heartbroken person in my early 20s. Like I was not, someone who had a positive bias. And I was like, that actually made it slightly better. Maybe there are other things we can do to make it better. Because in theory, if it's a mechanical issue, in theory, and by mechanical, I mean muscles and joints, maybe there are things we can do to help it, right? A brace or treatment or strengthening exercises or whatever. So that's when I kind of became obsessed with the idea of becoming an osteopath, just because one of the people who did help me a bit was an osteopath as well. And then I basically had to beg my Greek immigrant family to support me as I ignored law school offers. So I didn't know until recently some of the letters my dad got at home from some very good law schools. I scored really high in the LSAT. I like writing exams. I was a teacher for the LSAT as well. So yeah. But anyways, I had to beg them to basically fund my degree in the UK because as an international student, you don't have funding, understandably. So I'll never forget the coffee shop I was in. And it was in West London at the time. And I was on the phone and they were screaming so loud at me. I had to leave the coffee shop. Yeah. So anyways, they very kindly, I'm very grateful to my family for assisting with that. I was able to do my osteopathy degree. And then that's how I got to where I am today. I was kind of disillusioned with the degree. I didn't enjoy it a lot because it started out with the whole lecture being like, what is an osteopath? And then the answer was like, it depends. And I think we need some more standardization in the field. I think we need to have clear lines of competence and how we treat patients. I do think there needs to be some progress or reflection or maybe development there in future. But I'm grateful that I work in a profession which has made me very competent with, touching patients. I think there is a value in manual therapy. Hands are great tools. Like they're very sensitive and you can manipulate them in different ways. So I think they're very handy resources to use when trying to help people with muscle and joint pain. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I got into my field. And then the pandemic happened, which was challenging, which led to me doing online consultations and different things. And then the book happened and all this other stuff. But that's kind of, it's been a whirlwind.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you mentioned working with your hands and you say you play video games.
Yeah.
Does your EDS interfere with all of that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm so precious with my hands. Like I am, like these are very near and dear to me and important for my work. So I'm very, very precious with them. In terms of video games, I have to adjust how I hold the controller sometimes so I don't irritate the joints in my thumb. I currently don't need an adaptive controller, but it's something I want to learn more about in future. I actually have a guest I'm hoping to have on my podcast talk about adaptive video gaming because I just think it's such a cool world, basically. Yeah. But yeah, in terms of my work as well, I'm lucky in that my hands are not profoundly hypermobile. So listeners who are familiar with hEDS and HSD, they might know that the wrist sign or the thumb sign, and I qualify for both. So the wrist sign is where your thumb and pinky overlap around your wrist at the narrowest point. The thumb sign is where your thumb goes across your palm and it sticks out and it's visible through the other side typically. So I do have both of those representations of hand hypermobility in my hand, but I'm very lucky.
I don't quite understand what you mean. You're talking about pinky and thumb.
Yeah, I'll try and demo, okay? So for viewers, it's like if you hold your wrist and then you take your thumb and pinky. So the wrist is just in the air. You've taken your thumb and pinky of your other hand, and then you take them and you want to see if they overlap. So in mine, you can see there, it's like they're not just touching, they overlap. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's called the wrist sign. It's a feature of the current hEDS diagnostic criteria. It does not mean, I've seen so many guests on podcasts do this. So yeah, you can see you don't have it there. But it would have to be higher.
So I put my wrist higher and do that. And like, because like my pinky doesn't touch my thumb. That's the sign, is that?
It's not a sign. It's just a component of the diagnostic criteria. So the diagnostic criteria have this middle part, which has 12 different like characteristics or random signs or things associated potentially with hEDS. They're currently reviewing it. It will be updated in December.
Sure.
One of my biggest pet peeves is when experts go on podcasts and they're like, if you do this hand thing, you have hEDS or HSD.
Sure.
That's not true. You can
Yeah.
have, like, there are some people who just have really, really skinny wrists, okay? Like, there are a variety of reasons why this can happen. But
Yeah.
on the current diagnostic criteria, that counts for 1 point.
Uh,
Another point is the thumb sign. And these used to be called, like, Steinberg and something else. But with medical things which have names from people historically, we have lots of issues sometimes when those people went on to do not so good things. So that's why I say
Yeah.
wrist sign and thumb sign. With the thumb sign, you put your thumb across your hand. So what this looks like, I'm just going to hold up my hand for the viewers while I take my mouth away, because this one has stiffened up a bit, so I don't want to demo with that side because I baby it.
yeah.
But the thumb goes across
Oh.
and it sticks out. So you could see when I held it up just there, it was sticking out past the margin of my hand.
Yeah.
So that's called the thumb sign. I can do it on this one. Again, it irritates my thumb, so I don't like to ever demo with that one, just because I'm right hand dominant and I use my right hand a lot.
Sure.
So yeah, those are the thumb sign and wrist sign. They do feature on the diagnostic criteria. Again, they're not diagnostic, but if you can do those, feel free to speak with your medical doctor if you're concerned, of course. But my thumbs don't dislocate. So my thumb, again, if you're watching the video, it's hypermobile in this joint a little bit, but it's pretty rigid. It's pretty stiff there. I don't hyperextend. So my hands are sturdy enough that I'm able to do my work. There are some people that I think perhaps are in my profession. I've met students sometimes where their hands are so profoundly hypermobile that they may not be good candidates for a career involving your hands potentially. Or they may need to find different ways to do their profession that don't involve their hands. And the solutions and strategies and different aspects, there's so many different facets that you can work with people within. Like you could almost just do exercise in a way, and maybe that would avoid hand issues, right? But I'm very lucky in that my thumbs are stable enough that I can use them carefully and safely in part of my treatment. And again, active release technique, to be clear, like they're not marketing themselves as this, but I find anecdotally that the way they teach contact doesn't injure my thumbs because we're not digging in, it's not loading on joints. We're very, very, very careful in how we are using our hand and that thenar contact on the patient. So again, it comes back to kind of what you have. So even with my strength training, my shoulders have never dislocated. They sublux, they're hypermobile, but they're sturdy enough that I can exercise and benefit from that. So that what you have idea, and then what you do with what you have. So I'm a highly, highly trained professional with my hands in a challenging situation who kind of makes it work, or seems to make it work at least right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. That's those tests, those are kind of, never heard of those tests before. So I'm always fascinated about like those different tests and all that. So thank you
I go
for
through
sharing.
all of it in the book. It's in detail there. Okay. So it's if you want to learn more, please check it out.
Yeah. What's your book called?
It's called Help, I'm Hypermobile, your how-to guide for hEDS, HSD, and life in a hypermobile body. I'm obviously super proud of it. The cover was made by a wonderful, wonderful cover designer who's also a member of this community. So it was really like every way in which it could be a product of this, I don't know, this condition or this, this group of people that I'm so passionate about. I tried to make that happen. Even the typesetting was done in an ADHD friendly way, supposedly. I tried to make it accessible to people in that way. So yeah, it is my pride and joy, but I'm happy it's done.
I like it. Yeah. I have a few questions about the book a little bit later, but so I want to know about like, so your symptoms versus when you started like looking into other people having symptoms. Like what symptoms that other people had maybe surprised you or were like maybe shocking?
Yeah, I think in terms of other people, one of the hardest things as a clinician, and this is, I think, one of the hallmarks of a good clinician, is you have to be able to step back and remove yourself from the equation. So although it's a benefit in many ways, I would say, that I have hEDS, as it helps me to understand some of what my patients have gone through and be more aware of some of the things that can happen with this condition, one of the big dangers is that I impose my experience of my body onto them. So I have to be so careful to not be tempted into those very biased patterns of thinking because it will flaw my clinical judgment. So I have to really like kick myself out the door. Okay. In
Yeah.
terms of symptoms that have surprised me, I think a couple of things I had to learn about early on that were very important. So post-exertional malaise, it is commonly associated with MECF, chronic myalgic encephalomyelitis. I think I got that correct, and chronic slash CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome. So post-exertional malaise, it describes the condition where someone will basically exercise and then they almost feel like they have the flu after. Like exercise reliably makes them feel very, very unwell. And learning about that, I'm someone where exercise, even if I'm having a flare day, if it's not so bad that I can drag myself to the gym, it kind of like it won't make things worse typically, and it might make things slightly better, even if it won't fix things. So learning that that is something which can affect patients is important. If you're someone listening to this, I'd say certainly speak with your healthcare providers. I think that there is a big problem sometimes with anxiety around exercise for people with hEDS and HSD, which is valid. When you know there's something going on, but you don't know what it is and you have no support, it's very understandable to be anxious and to avoid exercise. It's completely justified. But long term, avoiding exercise can, of course, be problematic. So it all comes back to good management and good support. But learning about the complexities of people's reactions to exercise was very important for my clinical work. In terms of other things that surprised me, I think certainly learning that people can be okay until they're not. Like you know, it's a genetic condition. I thought like, oh, people should be symptomatic from childhood, like I have been. And realizing that you can have some people who were asymptomatic but hypermobile and who then became symptomatic and still hypermobile, obviously, but then would go on to meet the criteria for hEDS or HSD, like after a pregnancy or after menopause or after a stressful event or COVID infection or whatever. Learning about that and appreciating that that's a very real experience that some people have was certainly surprising for me at the time. Although, as I said earlier, it makes more sense for me now with the recent research on immune system involvement in people with hEDS and HSD. I think appreciating the impact of neurodivergence and ADHD in different conditions on people's musculoskeletal health. So, for example, when I program for patients, I didn't realize I was doing it in a ADHD-friendly way at the time. But as someone who, again, I need to clarify this diagnosis one day, but like I benefit massively from ADHD targeted lifestyle interventions. Okay, but as someone who struggles to do exercise when it doesn't gel with my way of thinking, I try and like find with my patients, like what makes them tick, like what will make them want to do this? Like, how can I make them feel really motivated to want to do it? So things like gamification. How can we make this a game? How can we make it time efficient? You know, say they hate it. If they're going to force themselves to do it, can I make it as short the suffering as possible? You know, things like habit stacking. Are they already doing something I can add these exercises on top of? You know, so trying to find ways to work with that patient's neurodivergence instead of against it, I think is critical to my success. Genuinely, I think it's one of the key things I do. And then also just like appreciating how much, I think like how much, this is going to sound so dark, but like how much suffering there is. Like everyone's suffering in silence. If I had gone to study law, I would be so unwell today. I would not be in the health I am. Like that's why for me, it's one of then this is an entirely personal issue, but one of the reasons why I think I mentally struggle a little bit with the disability label is because I think of what could have happened to me or kind of did or where I was before. And it was so much worse compared to where I am now. And although I still need accommodations sometimes, it's like, you know, when things were so bad and now they're less bad that you're like, this is great. Like this, I'll take it, you know? So I think that's where some of like and this is very personal to me, but some of the just like challenges I have with feeling confident, really saying like, hey, I do have a dynamic disability or identifying. I think that's where it stems from. But the things I hear from my patients break my heart sometimes. And especially pregnancy related issues involving, for example, I don't know if you know this, but sometimes local anesthesia doesn't work how it should. So sometimes epidural injection. Yeah. But yeah, go look at my pregnancy post. You'll see stories on there. And it's not just patient stories, it's research. This is a confirmed thing that we see at higher rates in people with hEDS and HSD. And the thing is, if the anesthesiologist or anesthetist, depending on which country you're from, what label they're using, if they know you have hEDS, or you have HSD or whatever, and you explain to them and they listen to you, in theory, that's why one reason I wanted my diagnosis. In theory, they should say, oh, this person is not numb. This is an elective C-section. We're not in a rush. We're going to find a way to try and reduce this patient's discomfort, and not do a C-section without appropriate anesthetic. So yeah, the amount of like dark things I hear, I think like sometimes I just come home from work and I'm like, wow, like that was a lot of stuff that I heard today. But that gets, I think the last thing I'll say is like, what surprises me is the amount of wonderful things I hear. Like the patients who've gone on to be able to do a pull-up, or who, like that patient who works as a glass blower, or I had this male patient who had he had a disc injury and has hEDS, and he had a bachelor party that was a sports day. So they do these in the UK where you do like 100-meter sprint and, I don't know, track and field type things. And he really, really wanted to go. And I was like, I'd prefer you didn't, but okay, we're going to find a way to make this work. And I told him, I'm going to treat you like one of my athletes. Like, you're going to be checking in with me during the day. I don't care. It's a Saturday. You send me updates. You're going to recover. You're going to wear this brace. You're going to do this. This is how we're going to approach everything. But finding those ways to have success. He didn't get injured, by the way. Like all his friends did. But my patient did not get injured that day, which I'm so proud of. But like fighting for these moments of joy, I think, is what, for me, it shouldn't surprise me, but it's something I continue to fall in love with over and over and over, because I get to help people do what they want to do in their lives, and they get to in turn make the world a brighter and better place just by being able to have a fuller existence.
Yeah. Lola was talking to me about like just general like over-the-counter pain medicines don't really help, and she was telling me, I don't know if you heard this part, but she was telling me that she's grown intolerant to it because she's taken it so much. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I'm very much not an expert in pharmacology. That's outside my scope of clinical competence. What I can say is that altered reactions to medication seems to be very common in this patient population. I can speak personally and say that Advil and Tylenol, or paracetamol, or acetaminophen and ibuprofen, depending on which country you're in, those do nothing for me. Like I take them just for like good luck sometimes. It's like just it's one of those days.
Placebo.
If you're having basically, I'm like, you know what? We're just gonna take it just in case. Maybe it'll help 1%. I'll take that 1% though. Like there's one saying I tell my patients all the time, like 1% improvements add up. And in my case, I was lucky that I was able to kind of scrounge around and find enough 1% improvements that added up into a very significant improvement for me. And one analogy we haven't gotten to, but one that I use to explain all this, because it is confusing and it's something we're going to have to keep talking about, in a variety of spaces until people hopefully are less confused. But with these connective tissue conditions, hypermobility related connective tissue conditions, it's kind of like getting a hand of a card game, like you get given a certain set of cards. Some people with hEDS, so the same diagnosis as me, they will have such severe co-occurring conditions, or they will be so severely affected that their hand makes it hard. Even with all the 1% improvements, they're not going to have the same scope of improvement as someone who got a bit luckier and who has a more workable hand. So it's that variation, it's that heterogeneity, I think, that is so, it's not surprising to me anymore. But I think to someone else, another healthcare provider who didn't work with this patient population, if they came to see me, they'd be like, so all your patients have the same thing? I'd be like, yeah, I know, but I'm used to it.
Yeah. I want to ask about ADHD. Like that kind of fascinates me as far as like that being any remotely related to EDS. Like what, is there research out there that says why?
Yeah, there are different researchers proposing different ideas as to why. Two of the biggest experts in the field I think they're actually UK based. So it's Professor James Custo, and I think it's Dr. maybe Professor, I can never remember titles, but one of those two, Jessica Eccles. And we don't know why yet, as far as I know. Okay. And again, I'm not an expert on ADHD. Maybe something was published this morning. Who can say? But we do know that the correlation is very, very significant. And it's something where I would be thrilled if when they're doing an ADHD assessment, they're also screening for joint hypermobility, generalized joint hypermobility, or looking, thinking about connective tissue conditions. I would be delighted if they're thinking about that. And vice versa, when patients are being seen for, regarding a potential hEDS or HSD diagnosis, there should be thought being given to could that patient be presenting, with ADHD potentially. So the correlation is significant enough that we need to be thinking about it. In terms of why, there was one idea, I think, which it kind of makes sense to me, where with hEDS and HSD, you're getting a lot of weird input all the time. Like you're getting chronic pain, you're getting joints that don't feel where they should be, you're getting vision issues are more common in people with hEDS and HSD, or issues, gastrointestinal things. You're getting all this like constant barrage of bodily feedback from things that aren't quite happening as they should, despite you usually looking relatively normal. And I think that sometimes that in combination as well with potential blood pressure issues, where you're getting not quite enough blood ideally to the brain all the time, which sounds serious to be clear. And for some people, they can faint from this. But I stand up and I'll get a bit of a whoosh, a little bit of a head rush sometimes if I stand up too quickly. And maybe that constant chronic slight underperformance of blood pressure regulation can put enough stress on neurological tissues and the brain that maybe that contributes to it. But that's purely hypothetical conjecture. I'm not an expert in this field. There are some researchers who do talk about this a bit more, but we don't know yet.
Interesting. Okay, I want to get into I want to say a statement, and I want you to tell me true, false, or it depends, and then we talk about it. The first one is stretching is one of the most misunderstood forms of exercise. True, false, or it depends?
True.
Okay.
Elaborate, I think just the idea
please.
that stretching is always good. So I don't know your age. I'm 34, but like growing up, we were always made to
41.
stretch. Okay, so they were always like, do you remember standing in a circle in phys ed and you're like all doing your stretching and stuff? So yeah. I was like so confused why we were doing that because I couldn't feel anything. It's just like, why are we all doing this ritual? Like nothing, I felt dead inside. Like I couldn't, they're like, oh, you should feel your triceps. I'm like, dude, I feel nothing. Like, what is the point of this? So I think, and at the time, it was pointless, but prolonged stretching over, a period of time can cause harm for people with hypermobility related connective tissue conditions. So I think the idea of stretching as innocuous and as harmless and always a good thing, like stretch before you warm up, stretch before you exercise, kids. Like, I think that's actually very, very harmful. I don't stretch. I do not tell my patients to stretch. I tell them the opposite. And instead we focus on muscle activation exercises or joint mobilization strategies or nerve flossing like I did in a recent video. But yeah, I'm very anti-stretching.
Interesting. Do your muscles ever get tight?
So I've had a weird life, right? So you can see my muscles here. We are quite muscular all over and in the upper body. And for me, feeling a shoulder stretch, like a pec stretch on a door frame, I felt that for the first time in my life when I was like 27, blew my mind. Like it's this pleasant sensation where you just kind of like get some movement in the muscle. And it was the first time I'd ever really like properly felt a stretch before. And it just baffles me to this day. Like sometimes I'll do like, I don't do a true stretch in the sense I'm not going as far as I can and holding it, but I'll kind of like wiggle in and out and back and forth. Like I'm not holding a position at end range. That's what I think of as stretching, and I don't do that. But feeling tension in muscles over your joints is like the nicest sensation if you've never had that. Just to elaborate further, I have a recent patient where she's been building muscle mass between her shoulder blades, which is so hard to do. It's one of the last things I got. So I could build up lots of muscle, on the visible part of the shoulder, but between the shoulder blades is so tricky if you can't see it and you don't have good support. So she finally has hit this kind of critical mass turning point where she now has enough muscle back there. And she told me the other day, she's like, Alex, like you sounded so weird when you first said this to me. But like I told her, like I tell all my patients, I'm like, it will feel like someone is holding your shoulder blades down with their hands from behind and following you around, which sounds like a really strange selling point, you know, to like inspire a patient to do a strength training program. But she was just like, she was like, that sounded good. And she did her exercises and we got them right because every patient's different. And sometimes, you know, everything has to be unique for every patient. But we got her to a point where she has muscle mass back there. She has lats, she has rhomboids, she has so much muscle in there. And she was like, Alex, this is the first week. It's felt like my shoulder blades like have a home. Like it's like they just have this little cushion of muscle around them. And that, yeah, it's wild. Some days I just like feel the muscle in my back and I'm just like, this is the nicest thing. So that's why when it's not possible for every single patient, but when it is, I really fight to help people feel that. And the sensation of like healthy or normal muscular function is just a really, really pleasant feeling.
Interesting. Okay. What about massages? Does that like, do you have any feelings one way or another about massages?
I do. Do you trust your therapist with your life? Basically, it's not your life, right? Like they're not going to kill you. But so story time. So my last massage I had was about 10 years ago, I think, and it was so sometimes I would work with patients on like bespoke, like they would be someone who's like, look, I'm really, really busy. I'm running all these like major companies and I want to see you for, you know, while I'm in like, I don't know, Germany or whatever. Right. So I go work with patients in different settings sometimes and on top of my work with athletes. Anyways, so I was working with this patient and there was this massage therapist who supposedly worked with this A-list actor, like neighbor or whatever, right? So I was like, oh, I'm really excited. This person must be amazing. Like I was like so excited to get to experience a massage from this like supposedly renowned massage therapist. And the massage therapist, who happened to be male, he saw me and that I was quite muscular. And he also knew about my work and my, you know, my profession. And he was trying to really demonstrate that like he was very like strong. And he's like, I will like fix everything in you. And he was really like digging in a lot. And he squished a nerve in my foot so badly I couldn't walk for like a month when I came back, which was hard for my work. Because again, I was doing a lot of traveling at the time. I didn't really have a fixed clinic location. Yeah, so I like that was when I just swore off massages. Before that, I would also get pain in my interscapular region. So that means the area between your shoulder blades on your back, because massage therapists sometimes would really dig in or use an elbow or this type of thing. Now, to be clear, because I love good massage therapists, and I don't want massage therapists to hear this. I feel like I'm ripping on massage therapists. Good ones are amazing. And it's something which I'm looking to maybe incorporate into my care in future if I have time. I've just been so busy and I can manage things myself that I don't. But trying to find hypermobility informed massage therapists for my patients who can kind of assist with like fascial support, if we call it that. Like it's not meant to resolve an injury, but it is meant to improve overall functioning and, you know, how people feel in their bodies. That's a really, really important part of what I do. I have a great colleague in London who is a very hypermobility informed massage therapist, and hopefully one day I'll see her as a patient and rehabilitate my personal relationship with massage therapy, because it is great when it's done well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. The excuse me. The next one, validation isn't the same as treatment.
Yeah, obviously they're not the same. Like they're two different things.
And the reason, well, yeah. So like, I think the reason why I liked this one is because, so I'll get into this. I was going to talk about it a little bit later, but one of the things that fascinated me when I was posting online about different EDS treatments was the vast amount of people that commented. And I sent you the clip that I was kind of like interested in talking to you, but I basically asked what's something completely normal for you that shocks healthy people, and Lola responded that I heard all the time, and the comments were so many different people, and I don't know, I'm sure some had hEDS, some didn't, just chronic pain, let's say, and so there were so many comments that were saying like 100% agree, and like, hey, these are maybe listing the things that they have that's not normal, and a whole bunch of different things. And it just kind of got me thinking that a lot of the community, it's almost like they're unheard, or like this is one of their avenues to be heard, or something along those lines. And like I don't know, I've heard you, Lola, and Ellie all tell me that like they weren't necessarily believed at first about like what their symptoms are, and so like I don't know what that says about the community in general, but I guess I was kind of curious what your thoughts are on that, and like the reason I thought validation isn't the same as treatment is because I wonder if some people are getting validated for their symptoms and not being treated properly, let's say. And obviously you've mentioned that, right? And so I don't know. Any thoughts on anything that I just said?
Yeah, so many thoughts. Thoughts on everything, apparently.
None, right?
So it's always going. Look, validation. Validation's an important first step, right? Like, how can we treat someone if the healthcare provider can't accept that they like are experiencing their symptoms, right? So I think validation is critical, and it's important because it helps that person realize like that they are not, like I thought I was over dramatic and needy and overly sensitive, and it tells them like, no, like you're experiencing a thing, like there's a reason why you feel this way. So validation is critical for sure. And I can say that both from my work with patients and on a personal level, absolutely. But that being said, I think that sometimes and currently, and I've been around long enough, I've seen this transition, especially in online spaces and private healthcare spaces where the hEDS HSD market is a very big market. Healthcare businesses want to benefit from this market. And I think that validation can be very enticing to people. And, if there are companies which are saying the right things, that click with that person, like you're in pain all the time, you're suffering, you're this, no one's believing you, gaslighting, whatever, like they're saying that language. I think sometimes that desire for validation from the patient, which is very reasonable. Again, I'm someone who's desired it myself and needed it. But I think that validation can be predatory sometimes by companies who maybe have profit margins above the patient's best interest. And again, I am a private business owner. I have to run a profitable business to be able to pay my mortgage and bills and work and whatever, right? So I appreciate that. But there are companies and courses where that people are being really, really financially exploited sometimes. And I think that it's only going to continue to get worse, especially with the prevalence of these conditions and how serious and how much they affect people. And I think that patients need to be very careful if they are seeking treatment. They're like, hey, I want my shoulder to feel better. It's great if you're seeing someone who's validating you, but is that what you're actually paying for? Is that what you want? Or is that what you're using your time for? Is it giving you the outcome that you need? So I think that they're both important, and we need to just always be very, very cautious as patients. One thing I will say on treatment, again, is that the evidence base for a lot of treatments is very, very limited, even for my own work. Like there are no studies on the type of manual therapy I do and hEDS, for example. There are no direct studies on that clinical outcome. So right now we're kind of navigating like the frontiers of this condition. And the principles that I follow with my patients to try and keep myself accountable, we do between 2 and 4 appointments maximum. If we are not improving in a reasonable way in line with the diagnosis and the prognosis, then we need to reassess. Because also, I'm always worried, could it be something else? That's one thing I'm always stressed about with my patients. The second thing, of course, is looking for behaviors that are predatory. So time-pressured sales or big upsells. Oh, like pay extra and we'll do this, or package sales. So I only operate in like you pay me for one appointment, we will do one appointment, that's it. Like that's how my dentist works. I happen to see a private dentist. It's how all private healthcare providers should work, in my opinion. But these kind of package sales of, oh, well, you'll save 15% if you purchase this many appointments, I think that can be predatory as well sometimes. So again, patients need to be careful.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna save if and when we do a part two, I'm gonna save a couple of these other ones for a
Okay.
part two. But I want to go into building Hypermobility HQ. Can you tell me how that started?
It started so my early on I thought I would be working more with athletes, so my original business name was Active Ambition. And then obviously when it got to the point where I'm like only working pretty much with hypermobile people. Again, if someone's listening and they really want to see me and they're not hypermobile, but they have a chronic injury or something that can't be figured out seemingly, I'm happy to work with complex chronic or treatment resistant cases. But it got to a point where I needed a business name that gelled with kind of my specialty, which is muscle and joint pain in people who are hypermobile. And that kind of just built, I wanted something with alliteration. I wanted something that I could kind of expand. So I can't get too much into detail about some things which are developing. My business has always been just me, but I am excited to grow that. I'm just a very cautious person. And I'm very protective of my patients and how they're treated. So that's why I could have gone down the more classic route of hire a bunch of associates and, let them work. But I care a lot about quality control, and it's easier to control things if it's just you, basically, in terms of doing it. So that's why my business development has been very, very slow in that way. I also always wanted to offer other things like some educational media for people. So one reason why I was so passionate about the book, I had a period of not having any money in my 20s, and it was brutal. And I don't even know how I got through it, but it was like sometimes you have a point in your life which makes you appreciate how much you have, and that I hope that's the lowest I ever go, because it was a dark time. But I could never have afforded to see me when I needed me most. I could not have done that. So I could have paid like £9.99 for an ebook, and that would have been within my budget. So for me, the idea of Hypermobility HQ has always been about making things which are accessible within reason to patients. And I do try sometimes to do different outreach events or different talks and so on. But for me, it's about making sure that I can offer what I wish had been offered to me. Again, going back to that sensitivity, I'm very sensitive about cost. So some patients can only see me once, and I will try my best to make that the best appointment of their life and as useful as possible.
Yeah.
So we work at a fast clip, and I say, look, just be upfront with me. If this is the one appointment, that's fine. Just tell me. And I want to make sure I write you a really good report, and that helps you, communicate with your other healthcare providers, or that tells you how to do some exercises or something. Right. So I think for me, it's just quality. It comes down to quality healthcare. It doesn't come down to like, I don't know, tech is important and facilities are important. And I'm lucky. I work in a very high spec clinic space, and I have a swish gym, and, it's heart of central London, and it's beautiful and I love it. But at the end of the day, the healthcare interactions I've had, which have been the most valuable to me, have been from people who clearly love what they do, who care about their patients, and who continue to learn and challenge themselves and refuse to let the quality of their clinical work drop. So that's what it's about for me.
I love it. What's been one of the hardest things about, how long has the business been around? And then what's been one of the hardest things about running the business?
Yeah, the business has been around since 2020, February 2020 was when I incorporated. Oh, yeah, we had a rough start, okay?
I think we can all answer what the hardest thing was.
That was a bad time. So it's been around since then. Look, like I didn't know how to run a business. I literally Googled how to make a business, like how to run a business. Like I don't know anything, right? So the hardest part has been finding initially good accountants. I have an amazing accountant now, but it's really difficult when you can be taken advantage of. I was in my late 20s. I interviewed 5 different accountants. I picked the one who seemed the best, and he ultimately didn't do my accounts. So I had to pay someone else to redo them. Whoa. That was like £2,000 or something with money I didn't have at the time. And it was just, maybe it wasn't 2K, but it felt like 2K at the time. Anyways, it was like lots of money compared to what I had at that time. But it's the stuff you can't control. You'll see a pattern in me where I like to be very in control of things. I like to be in control of my body. And again, there's a balance between healthy control and kind of disordered behavioral control issues. Absolutely. But whenever possible, I like to just feel in control of my business, of course. So for me, I've been very lucky to develop a core team with my wonderful, wonderful assistant, my wonderful accountant, which means that I can just focus on the things in the business that I need to pour my energy into. For me, the biggest challenge has probably been finding balance between all the different things I've done and also my own health. I hate that I have this condition. I know some people will say like, oh, it's my superpower or whatever. And again, they're entitled to their view. If I could, I heard you ask someone else on the podcast, like, if you could not have it, would you not have it? Like, it's hard because if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be the person I am. And I really, really like the person I am. But the journey I went through to be the person I am was really, really hard.
Right.
It's like, it's a difficult thought process to go through, but it's hard running a business when you have chronic health issues. But it's all about that, like, finding balance and having people who care about you. So my assistant recently, she was like, Alex, she's like, you need to stop doing like these clinic days. She's like, this is too much. Like, I know you and you're not, you're not being yourself. So having people around you who care about you, I think, is critical, and who can remind you, she reminds me sometimes, she's like, Alex, you have hEDS, like, you have stuff going on. Like, you need to actually, like, would you be treating yourself this way if you were your patient? I'm like, oh no, like, absolutely not. So having people to kind of call you out on your behavior, I think, is, maybe it's just a me thing, but I need people to call me out on self-care for sure.
Yeah. How have you like, you kind of talked about how you're managing EDS along with being busy, but just with being busy in general, like how do you, what advice would you give someone to manage all of that, like outside of hEDS?
I think, one, figure out if you may have undiagnosed ADHD and learn lifestyle trips for that. And I think those can help a lot. They've certainly helped me. If I don't do things when I think of them, they go into the mind drawer of things that never get done. So that's one of my friends, Hannah, in case she ever listens to this, she was like, Alex, you need to do things from A to Z. Like the Amazon saying, she's like, you need to get things done immediately or else they won't get done. And I was like, you're right, and you're a good friend. And I hate how you know me. But I think certainly in terms of time management, you can push until you can't. And burnout is real. And there's a point where it goes from flirting with burnout to like aggressively flirting with burnout. And you have to know when to pull it back. And because of my professional background and my healthcare knowledge, I have a little bit more insight, I think, into when I'm getting close, and I will push that limit. But in my case, I'm able to kind of know how to recover. And let's say that I did injure I injured a disc last year as an example. Like, I gave myself a very good treatment and management plan as best I could, and I hope that won't happen again. And based on my strengths developments, I'm very hopeful for real that will never recur. But in terms of other things, I think certainly being unapologetic about prioritizing what matters to you. So I have absolutely lost some friendships over the last few years because I've been working a lot since 2020 or 2019. And I'm okay with that because I love my work. Like, I know not everyone does, but how lucky am I to get to do work that brings me joy, that, like, I've never hated my job. I've never dreaded going into work. So I know that balance is important, but if you're lucky enough to love what you do, then the friends who want to be there for that journey while you're doing what you love, like, they'll still be there, So I think feeling less pressure to have like a super, super large social group is something, like, as I've aged, I've become more comfortable with. I have my friends. I'm sure I'll make some new ones. They'll be awesome, but I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna feel guilty if I'm not doing all of this social calendar that I know sometimes people feel pressure about, or at least I do.
Yeah.
And choice of partner is important. So I'm so lucky, and I shouldn't say lucky because everyone should have this, but like, my partner and I have a 50-50 work split. Like, honestly, he does more of the cleaning than me. He'll be like, it's like a 90-10 split, but yeah, he does a lot of cleaning, and he even does some cooking, and I do a lot of cooking, but that's okay. But we we find ways. We're both working professionals in London. We don't have any children right now, but like he, we collaborate together to help support each other. So on days when I'm running on fumes, he's there, you know, helping me out with so many things. And on days when, you know, it's vice versa, I mentioned earlier his Hashimoto's, I'm there, like being like, babe, don't worry, I got you, don't stress. So it's like having that type of support is helpful. And again, I'm someone who has periods, certainly of being single, and it's more difficult because you don't have someone there to like do the dishes. You know, they'll still be waiting for you when you're done having your horrific headache or whatever. They don't magically go away, unfortunately. But having support, if you can, is good for sure. And that's helped me. And it's how I'm more productive because we just have two people looking after everything.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned the book, Help, I'm Hypermobile. What inspired you to write the book versus, you know, you have a YouTube channel. I mean, you have a podcast and social media and all that. Why that avenue, let's say, as well?
Yeah, I think because I've been on social media for a while, it's gone in a direction that I don't love always sometimes. I think it was a lot more playful and kind of, I don't know, I felt like it was a more expressive space, or it was a little bit different, you know, in the past. And now I just think sometimes, you know, I see my younger patients in the whole idea of like touching grass and kind of unplugging from stuff. And I really like that. Like, I feel happiest when I'm unplugged. So I wanted a resource that people could refer to and read through. And, you know, it's scientific, but hopefully it's mildly entertaining sometimes. I tried. But I wanted a resource that would let people learn, but not have to be online. Because the problem with social media as well is people often talk from their experience, which is fine. I talk from mine. But sometimes they don't use caveats to explain, like, hey, like, this is just my experience, you know, or sometimes, you know, algorithms prioritize certain things. We know they tend to prioritize what gets views. And sometimes it is those more extreme presentations who get views. So again, I have had some pretty serious things happening to me, but I feel pretty good. Like I said, I'm 34. Don't try and bring younger Alex back. She was in a world of pain. I don't want that body right now, you know? So, you know, sometimes those patients that are having better clinical outcomes, they might be online a little bit less because they're just out living their life and, you know, they're not kind of in that, I don't know, that space as much, or their views are not being prioritized by the algorithm, so they don't feel motivated to post because their videos aren't getting lots of views because they're like, I went to the gym today and had a nice time, and not like, oh my God, I went to the gym and this horrible thing happened. So yeah, I wanted something which let people be offline. I wanted something which was like a little map, you know, like just a little guide of like, the book cannot be everything. I tried. It's not like I couldn't do it. You cannot fit everything about every way that people can be affected in hEDS and HSD in a book. But I wanted it to be a starting point so that people could appreciate what connective tissue is, what hypermobility is, what hEDS and HSD are, how other conditions do exist and we need to be aware of them, co-occurring conditions, and then like what are little changes or strategies you might be able to talk with your medical doctor about that might help you or that you maybe could implement into your day-to-day life if it's safe for you. So I just wanted it to be kind of like a one-stop shop beginner starting point, almost like a tutorial if we use like a video game analogy.
Does that mean there might be a part 2 of a book, or?
Look, the truth is I'll do another book one day because as much as it was a really challenging experience. So with the book, I will say, I approached professional, like publishers back in the day, publishing houses, and the feedback I got routinely was the writing's good, the concept's good, the market's not there. And I was like, the market is there. And that was what I got told about my website as well, because I was being encouraged to use chronic back pain as like a search term. And I was like, no, it's hypermobility. I don't care if it's not a term right now. I will help make it a term. Like, we're going to be talking about connective tissue in its different forms. So anyways, basically, with the book, sorry, what was the question?
I don't know. I was just, I think I was just riffing. It was, I mean, the original question that I think you asked, that I asked was, gosh, we can, we can move on from that. The original question was, hold on, let me see. I had a initial. I think I asked like what made you think the book exists.
Yeah. Why did you want to do it?
And then I think I asked another follow-up question to that. And I don't remember what it was.
No, I think you asked like what does the book, like why a book and why not something else? That's what you were asking. And it's just because it gives people, I think also too, a book like legitimizes things a little bit. So for me, doing the book was so important that even though traditional publishers turned me down, again, not for my writing being bad, not for the subject or structure being bad, but just for the market not being there, that I said, you know what, fine, I'm going to do it myself. So then you get into self-publishing. Self-publishing can be done in a very amateur way, and it can be done in a very professional way. I wanted to publish the book to the highest professional standard possible, again, because doing a very amateur book that isn't well done, it doesn't help to make people take this stuff seriously. So I ended up having to source and pay for a copy editor, a cover designer, actually two, because I didn't like the first cover, so that had to be redone, typesetter, book formatter, indexer. I didn't know that indexing was a profession. So if you read my book, and one researcher read it and emailed me, and I'm so grateful that this person like reached out, because the back of the book took a lot of time and money. And I know no one else will look at it, but you, like an indexer is a professional who goes through your book and then figures out which terms need to be referenced in the index and then finds the pages they're mentioned on. Yeah, I did not know. There's a chartered society of indexers. But anyways, one of the joys of the book, like the struggle was becoming my own publisher, because I didn't realize how much work. It's like making a new business is involved in that, right? But all the professionals I worked with were so lovely. Like that was an overall positive experience. And for me, I'm so proud that something exists, which kind of sums up a lot of my professional views. And it does in a way legitimize my English degree, which I will always maintain was legitimate. I think it's as important as my osteopathy degree. My English degree was the theory of people. You know, what have we thought about in society? What have we bothered to write about in history? You know, like what do we think as people? So that first degree about what I consider to be like the theory of people obviously complements my osteopathy degree, which in my mind is applied people. It's what are we made of? So for me, it was kind of just like, it's something I'm very proud of. And on a personal note, I will always believe my mom had hEDS based on her symptoms, photos. You can see her joints are hypermobile, and obviously I got it from somewhere. And because of this, it was kind of like a memorial thing in a way, in a very personal way. Like when I felt unwell, when I had horrific neck pain and headaches, because writing the book was really, really painful for me. It was the fact, like, I wish more than anything I could have explained to my mom, hey, like all these gut issues you had, all this muscle and joint pain, all these, you know, these weird skin rashes and stuff, like there might have been a reason for that. And I'm so sorry that you never got to know about it. So that kept me going.
Yeah. Okay. So then let's move on. So you also have a podcast.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so the podcast is also called Help, I'm Hypermobile. So that's the same title as the book. I started that. So the early episodes, I'm like, so the earliest episodes have no video. I'm under a duvet trying to figure out sound quality on a computer, okay? So that was the early episodes. I made those just because there were things I wanted to talk about, which you can't fit in a short form video. And again, I know people's attentions are getting shorter. I love how your podcast is long. Like I listened to multiple 2-hour episodes and I was not expecting them to be that long, but like, I think there are good things in long form content. No, they were great. They were like juicy. When you get into them, I was just engaged. So anyways, people should subscribe and listen. But for that podcast, I wanted to be able to have kind of a roadmap I could share with my patients. So you'll see this theme, like I'm painfully aware that a lot of what I say to patients each day, I'm repeating myself. And I wanted episodes where I could talk about a basic understanding of gastrointestinal issues and hypermobility, for example. Again, I'm not a gastroenterologist, I'm not a gut specialist, but I can tell you basic information about hypermobile connective tissue and how the gut can be affected. So I wanted to do an episode on that. So when a patient asks me like, Alex, could my gut be involved? I have these symptoms. I'm like, listen to this podcast, look at the research that I reference in it, talk to your doctor, you know? So For me, a lot of the creative stuff I've done has been also making resources to help me help my patients. And it also forces me to think laterally and in a bit of an artistic way. So one of my favorite episodes is the one on posture. And I talk about the history of posture and the history of ergonomics. And, why do we have good posture and bad posture? Like, posture's just position. Like, all postures are postures. Why do we have this posture hating? I slouch sometimes because I'm tired and my muscles need to rest. Sitting upright's really hard, okay? And that's okay. That doesn't make me a bad person. That doesn't mean I have a bad posture. I'm just resting because I need to rest, So
Yeah.
it let me kind of deep dive into some topics which I just think are underappreciated and which I like to explore more with my listeners.
Yeah, that's awesome. Side note, I'm laughing, I'm grinning a little bit because my friends and I have an inside joke where it's interesting, and I'm curious, anybody watching, as soon as you hear the word posture, like everybody, like including myself, usually people like will adjust and be like, oh yeah, I got to sit up straighter and all that, right? I'm curious how many people, when you said posture, adjusted their own posture when you heard that. So
Most people will. But like take that shame and throw it in the garbage. Again, like posture is this idea of good posture. So many patients see me, Alex, I've been told I have bad posture. Can you help me? And it's like, look, the question is not about whether the posture is good or bad. The question is about whether the posture is serving you. And usually what they mean by posture is that upright, standing, or seated posture. Where are their shoulder blades? How is their spine? So what we just want are positions that our body can be in that are biomechanically advantageous, that let us move in the ways we need to move, and that don't exacerbate our symptoms and cause us pain. That's all we want.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I just think there's so much value laid in language and healthcare. And there's a lot of, again, going back to sales and seductive ideas. How big is the posture market? How easy is it to tell someone, oh, your posture's bad, but if you buy this device, it'll be better? How easy is that business
you'll get
model?
better posture.
Yeah. Helping patients is difficult, blaming them. And that's what posture is. A lot of times, like, oh, well, you have bad posture. That's often a clinician blaming a patient for their symptoms. Blaming patients is easy. Helping them is hard.
That's great. Blaming patients is easy. Helping them is hard.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. That's a profound statement. I like it.
Thank you.
Has creating content changed the way you practice clinically?
Yeah. No.
Or
So
just
I've learned.
added to it?
Oh, no, I've learned so much. So, for example, we had EDS Awareness Month in May, and there was a lot of focus on rare types of EDS. So all the types we haven't talked about this episode. So classical EDS and kyphoscoliotic and vascular and all these different types. So for me, it's really helped to educate me on gaps in my knowledge. And again, these aren't the patients that I see primarily in clinic. Normally I would be referring these patients to other healthcare providers for sure. But it's important to always be aware of the space that you're in and the other ways that people can be affected by connective tissue conditions. So it's absolutely helped me clinically. Of course, there is content that's excellent and content that's not so excellent. And I feel bad for people who are less educated in this field navigating content, because I can very quickly be like, no, this is garbage. Like, what is this? This is not right. This is wrong.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have the knowledge I have, if I wasn't a professional in this space, it would be a lot easier to fall for misleading content, unfortunately. So that's difficult. But it has helped me to think of, different ways of doing things too. Like some people will show, oh, this really helped me, this modification or this idea, or like I've shared little tutorials on what I call positions of supported rest. And I do talk about this in the book as well, but this idea of if you're not propping up joints, they're falling down and you're having to work to support them. So for example, like if I do a really intense gym session, and sometimes I do, and that's okay for me. But if I come home and I'm feeling fatigued, I might roll up a towel and just make a little kind of makeshift neck support, just because I want to not have to hold my head up while I'm watching a movie on the couch. And I just want that extra support there. So I think like everyone's little strategies that they use can be really, really helpful to learn about. As well, I think certainly language. So for me, learning about disability has been a big thing through the online space, because again, I'm someone where like, it's kind of, it's a dynamic disability. It's something where I have the privilege to get to mask, and I do that, a lot basically. So for me, just learning about the different ways that people can be affected by disability, the history of disability rights and advocacy has been something that I've certainly learned about a lot. So again, it's like these areas of knowledge which intersect with my clinical work, which then help me to help my patients. Like going back to that statement I said earlier, when a patient was threatened, like, oh, if you don't do this, you're going to end up with a wheelchair. Like, what is the wheelchair, like evil? Like, why are we threatening people with like, it's a mobility aid. It's a mobility aid like any other mobility aid. You know, eventually a lot of people are going to need mobility aids in their lives. So why are we using them as threats? They're just tools to help patients.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. You said something, it slipped my mind. I lost it.
It'll come back.
Okay, so yeah, it might if it's important. It was important enough. I do this thing where like if I have an idea, and by the way, if you have ADHD, I was diagnosed early on with the ADHD as a kid. I don't know that I still have it anymore. I think I probably do, but one thing that's really helpful is when someone's talking, my gut reaction is to want to interrupt them so I don't lose my thought. And what I do instead is I cross my fingers and say, all right, this is the idea. And sometimes I'll like have all my fingers crossed. So like I'll have like 4 ideas to talk to somebody about. But yeah, anyway, that's just a little tip and trick that I do. It's super helpful.
I've learned something today. Thank you so much.
Yeah. But okay, so what's been one of the most rewarding messages or comments you've ever received from a reader or listener?
In terms of rewarding, I think for me, it's just been knowing that something I thought was silly. You know, like back when I used to post videos a lot, I would just be like, here's a tip, here's a tip, here's a tip. Like my archives have like tons and tons of just random things that help me. And sometimes I would post a tip that it was so pointless, I almost didn't post it, but then someone found it helpful. So I think just kind of like contributing to that crowdsourcing of knowledge. And again, we all have to be careful, you know, when we do it and define our scope and be thoughtful and whatever, right? But I think like, it's like, I was looking up something the other day, like how to fix a lock on a door or something. And you know when someone just makes a good tutorial, they're just like, hey, you have this problem. Don't worry. You're going to try this. And if it doesn't work, call a locksmith. You know what I mean? Like that sort of just content when you need it is so helpful. So I think I get emails and comments and stuff all the time. Like when people, I'd say what means the most to me is when people take the time to email me. That means a lot to me. And again, no one had, please, like, you know, this is not me asking for people to email me, but like if someone really feels like so motivated that they're like, Alex, I saw your content, I listened to your podcast, I read your book, and it like changed my life. Knowing for me that I've hopefully just helped one person have a better quality of life, it means everything. And obviously like the stuff with my mom has affected my work a lot. I think we talked about more than I have on any other podcast, but for me, again, like hEDS and HSD, they are not life limiting directly in the sense that they're not going to kill you imminently like some other disease processes, right? But the amount of gaslighting and clinician related trauma, whatever you want to call it, that people go through, it is potentially really harmful. I will always feel like if my mom had not had a lifetime of having her symptoms dismissed, that she may have been able to say, hey, like, dude, I know you're saying that it's anxiety, but you know, there's a lump here. Can I get a second opinion? Can we please image it? You know, are you sure? Like, can we double check this? And she just, in my opinion, didn't have the confidence to do that. So, and I always wonder if it would have been different if she'd known that her lifetime of symptoms had an explanation and she wasn't sensitive, she wasn't anxious, she had a lump in her breast that rightly deserved investigating. So like for me, what I hope it does more than anything, what makes me happy, I guess, in a way, is I feel like the person who learns something from my content, maybe they'll be safer because it helps them to appreciate that maybe this applies to them, even if they're not diagnosed. And maybe that will help them be able to access healthcare and maybe a diagnosis to be able to keep themselves safe. Like I just want everyone to be safe and not to have bad things happen to them. Yeah.
You mentioned, you know, going to the gym and pushing yourself and stuff like that. And it seems like over the years you've kind of found the balance. But if someone listening has not found that balance, what do you think is like the first step to being able to find that balance?
Yeah, so I'd say if you want to see what's possible in terms of strength training and overall general fitness, I think step one is see a healthcare provider who's appropriately qualified to assess your joints. So I'm lucky in that I'm very much hypermobile, but my joints are stable enough that I'm not having spontaneous dislocations or other serious issues happen right now, right? And again, things can change, but you will see people who have greater joint instability. For example, some people have hip dysplasia or changes in how the bone is actually shaped in the hip, right? So there are different things that can happen in a joint, even independently of hEDS or HSD, but which can start to affect the joint, which we need to clock. So see someone and be like, hey, am I safe to strength train or am I safe to do fitness? That's what I would recommend people do. Maybe a physiotherapist, an osteopath, maybe some other profession, but just find someone who's appropriately qualified and see them. Second thing I would say is ideally, I didn't have the money at the time. So I was just, like I said, I would go to the gym and like pick random exercises and just try and not hurt myself. But if you can find someone who is able to support you, it helps. I have a coach and I've had this coach for 1.5 years now and he's amazing. But it's the first time in my life I've really had someone, coaching me and looking at me. And it absolutely has helped to increase my progress. Because as much as I'm a professional, I can't see myself all the time. I'm not going to watch every video of every move I do in every workout. So it's nice having someone checking in on me and monitoring that progress. And I think as well, we have to remember hypermobility specialist is not a protected term. I call myself a hypermobility specialist osteopath, and I would argue that I am, but it's a term anyone can use. It's not protected. So as much as you may find it helpful to work with a fitness professional who says that they specialize in hypermobility or hEDS or HSD, you may also find someone that you get on really well with who's super, super smart, who you may be like their first patient, but maybe they're just able to listen to you or talk with your medical doctor. And you can get what I call like the perfect triangle of support, where you have the healthcare provider, the patient, and the fitness professional who work together to help support that patient. That's what I try to do with my patients in London, because that's what I saw my professional athletes getting. You have the athlete, the coach, and me, and we work together to support the athlete. Why would I change that, just because someone is not a professional athlete? We still have the athlete or the patient, myself, and their coach or their PT, and we all work as a team, and that gets better outcomes. So that'd be my advice for starting out.
Okay. So I want to push back on something you said. So
push back.
You said the first thing was seek a medical professional, which I think I agree with for the most part. But I don't have EDS. I have spina bifida. I've been in the medical world since birth. I've had countless surgeries and all that, and I think I've lost faith in the medical industry. And now that's not to say that there's not good doctors out there, but gosh, they're hard to find. And I think you've experienced that yourself. And so like my first thought, just thinking about like if I had EDS, I've already gone through the ringer with all these medical professionals, and it's like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to take this into my own hands, do it myself, which maybe that's not the best way to go. But I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who you've talked to that feel the same way I'm kind of articulating right now.
Yeah, that was me as well. I had no medical support. I was just doing my best. So what I will say, just bearing in mind again the different types of EDS, if someone has vascular EDS or whatever, they have to have medical supervision. Like if you have a rare type of EDS, I would say those patients, like I urge them, just because they have different management guidelines, right? So if you're someone where you have serious cardiovascular, different things going on in your health, there's a certain line of safety that we never want to cross. I'm always a very cautious person, right? I work as a healthcare professional. I have to tell patients to go and be checked, right? So it's partly me just doing what I'm professionally obligated to do. That being said, there's harm certainly in patients who they get held back because they're like, oh, well, I can't afford to see a medical professional. I'm scared to move. What can I do? And the clock is ticking. They're not being able to go to the gym or to exercise in their home or whatever they're doing. So I fully agree with your point there. I would just say if you have any concerns about your personal safety or you have a history of serious joint dislocation or trauma, I would recommend just getting trying to figure out what risks might apply to you. For example, like right off the bat, I told my coach, hey, I can do movements that are inversion, so where I go upside down, like in a handstand, but I can't stay there for really prolonged periods of time because I don't want too much pressure on my eyeballs. But again, I'm aware of that risk because of my professional background. Not everyone will be. So in life, it's all about like, I'm not a life coach. Sorry, that sounded way too broad, but like you have to make risks. So you have to assume risks sometimes, but we want to be reasonable and safe with the risks that we assume. So if you're someone who you believe it's safe for you to exercise and you have nothing to suggest that it may not be safe for you to exercise, then by all means. But be careful. Maybe don't do five-a-side football. Maybe start at, in a lower risk environment. What I can say as well is for me, a lot of the body weight exercises didn't work well at all. So I was trying to do Pilates and I was getting neck pain. And the Pilates instructors were like, oh, that's your neck getting stronger. And I was like, no, it's not. It's my neck getting injured. And they were like, no. And it became a bit of an argument. And what helped me was, I say heavy weights. They weren't heavy at the time. They wouldn't be heavy for the average person, but they were heavy for me. And the reason I think that weight helped is because I could get feedback of where my joint was because I had something to challenge it a little bit. So I think like the key takeaway I want with exercise for any listeners is everyone's path will be different, every single person. And ultimately the single most important thing is being unapologetic and finding what is best for you, your path of exercise. Like, I love that you play tennis. I want to learn to play tennis one day. It's always, been something I've never been able to do. But your path to developing your fitness will be different from mine, and that's okay. And I think, again, it's people, both patients and professionals, have this desire for like the magical hEDS, HSD exercise plan to come down from above and like, this is what every patient must do. But it's not that simple. And ultimately it's finding what's safe for people. And again, there's a lack of safety in not exercising, that can be dangerous too. So finding what's safe for you and also what you enjoy. I think if, when I'm talking with patients about exercise, the first question I ask them is, what do you find fun? What do you enjoy? Because if you tell me, Alex, I love tennis, I'm going to be like, that's great. Okay, here's how we're going to build around that. Like, let's help to enhance that. What do you want to do in tennis you can't do right now? Or what's causing you issues? Or, how can we fit it into your tennis schedule or whatever? So I think working in that way is really productive. But I agree with your pushback on that. I just want everyone to be safe.
Yeah. That's completely fair. So I want to wrap up here in a second, but when you were listening to my podcast, you heard a story about me standing in church, and just an FYI, I'll rehash that real quick. So the story was I went to church on my own, and I had my crutches on the booth, and I was standing. And I got tired because, you sit and stand in church all the time as you go through it. And I sat down before everybody else sat down. And this guy looked over at me and was like, basically something like, what, you don't respect God? And I don't know, something along those lines. And I didn't say anything to him. I just pointed at my crutches, and he was just like, it was there's a good ending to that because we ended up talking after and being more or less friends, but let's say acquaintances. Someone I didn't see very often, but we started to become familiar with each other and know each other a little bit better. So it worked out, I think, in the end. But sounded like you had a story that was similar to that.
No, that experience resonated with me so much because growing up, my dad taught Sunday school at our Greek Orthodox church. So I don't know how long your services were. Ours were 3 hours.
That's
so
crazy.
long. Like, That's why, when people complain of being bored, like nothing will ever match the boredom I felt. Because 3 hours is a good day. If someone
Yeah.
dies, they do this thing called an emosimo, which is an extra 45 minutes. And they can have
Oh,
multiple ones. Like it's a very long service. Okay. And I know it's not like I'm putting it down. It is a fine faith. If you are Greek Orthodox, that is fine. I do not practice currently because I didn't have the best experience because
yeah.
we had to stand, and the standing was agonizing for hours in my little Sunday dress shoes. I have an undiagnosed connective tissue condition. I have dysautonomia. I'm really, I actually still struggle with standing for prolonged periods of time.
Yeah.
So standing is like my arch nemesis to this day. But anyways, I would stand, and they had these. Did your church have the little like things you pull down from the
Yeah.
pews? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Did you ever want to? I wanted to kneel all the time.
That you kneel?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Well, I was like, look, because if standing is devout, like the kneeling people, they're extra devout. Like it was all the, yeah, no one could
Yeah.
criticize you for
That's
that.
that's so true.
Yeah.
I never thought to do that. I don't have as much flexibility in my hips, so like kneeling wouldn't have been comfortable for me. But that's fascinating. Anyway, keep going.
Well, yeah, for a hypermobile person, it's like your dream because your legs are then not below your body. So it helps with the blood pooling too. So I was like, sometimes you can feel what's good for you. And I'm like, I really want to kneel. So I was asking, I'm like, can I kneel? And then my dad was like, no. And I was like, why? And he's like, because you're not, like you're not, old. And I was like, but why not? He's just like, Alex, like, no. So anyways, I didn't get to pursue my dream of kneeling during church service. And we also weren't allowed to sit.
Yeah.
But it was a experience which certainly colored a lot of my pain during childhood. It certainly was a high injury mechanism for me. And for Greek Orthodox service, it gets worse. So at Easter, if you're a young woman, you have to do this. You don't have to, but if your dad runs Sunday school, you have to do this thing called being a miaphora. And the miaphora had to stand outside like Christ's tomb. That was the whole idea. So you're standing for like 6 hours. Like the Easter service is so long.
Whoa.
It goes from like 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. to like 2 in the morning or later. Like I don't even know. But anyways, you have to stand in front of people and you can't fidget and you can't move as well. So again,
Wow.
it's like, yeah, it was, and you take shifts with the other girls, but still it's like a very long, very not fun time. And I was always really jealous of my brother because he got to be an altar boy. They got to go sit like behind the curtain or something. And I was like, why can't I be an altar boy? Then we got into discussions about gender roles in the church. I was I had a lot of beef with a lot of things, okay?
Yeah.
So that is my church and standing story. We were friends with a person from the Catholic Church. So sometimes we got to go for Catholic service, which was way more fun because you got to sing and you got to sit a bit more. And the services are like an hour long. I feel really bad if you're listening to this and you're going to church services that are like 3 hours. I feel really sorry for you. Hopefully you can sit.
Yeah, our church services were like 45 minutes. I think it was
Living the dream.
Lutheran church. So right.
That is good. Greek Orthodox churches, they weren't even in English. It's in ancient Greek. So I'm just, yeah.
So you don't understand half of it.
No,
Oh.
I don't even speak modern Greek. So I'm just there, and like it was it's a very.
Did your parents understand?
No, my dad had
language?
practiced for so long. You just kind of memorize stuff, but then they get the incense out, and then if you have. I don't have a diagnosis of MCAS, but I'm very sensitive to different. I have weird allergies sometimes, and the incense would burn my eyes and make me cry. So the priest is coming by shaking the incense. I'm like shielding my eyes, like it was whole. Yeah, it was a thing. But I don't know. I couldn't do it again. It was hard for little child Alex, and I'm happy now to be able to put my legs up most Sundays.
Yeah. Interesting. So what's next for you I know you said that you have things that you can't talk about, but what's next for you?
Yeah, I think what's next for me is continuing to develop myself as a clinician. So something that's really important to me is that the quality of my clinical work with patients doesn't drop. And it's very easy to study and do your degree and early on in your career learn. And it's quite tempting to slow down and to stop, learning new information. But if you're good in this field, you have to continue to always educate yourself. So I'm very excited now the book is done. I have a bit more time so I can attend some conferences. The Royal Society of Medicine's down the street from me, so I've booked in a bunch for this autumn and winter. So I'm very excited to go to some of those. In terms of other things, I really want to get back to some friendships, which I've neglected. So I'm excited to prioritize my friendships and social time because I do have some people who are very near and dear to me. I'm rebuilding my own body and my own health. So sometimes I share on my social media and I'm doing certain things at the gym. And again, I'm doing very advanced things because I've been working on this for 13 years in a very careful way. So for me, continuing to see what's possible from a movement perspective. And one thought I just want to add in is a lot of people are very quick to limit themselves. Oh, this is possible, this is not. I never would have thought that I could do a lot of the movements I can do at the age I am now with the condition I have. If I was going through my health journey today, I'd see everything on social media and I'd be like, this is it. I'm done. Like, I can never improve anything. That would have been my takeaway. So I'm really grateful that I went through a lot of my journey before, I was potentially exposed to people's experiences, which may have made me doubt my own personal experience, and everyone is so different. So I think continuing to develop my physical fitness, and then I'm actually, so I heard on another podcast episode, you don't like cats, but I do have two, and they're very dog-like. So Cleo loves strangers. She waves her tail side to side like a dog, like a lab that knocks things off the table. Like she does that. Like she does an aggressive horizontal wag. Like if you're a plumber and you come to our home, like she's like, oh, you haven't met me yet, but we're best friends. And I've taught her how to talk using buttons. So I want to continue. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
So I want to continue to develop her vocabulary, and I'm trying to teach her to make choices. So like I put treats in my hands, like, do you want chicken or fish? And then you can build on that. Do you want to do, I don't know, rope, or do you want to do spinner toy or whatever? You can kind of expand on that. So I do tricks as well. So I just bought a basketball to teach her how to walk on it. So Cleo, I never film content on her. I really should, but
yeah, you should.
That's like, if there was something that would make me trust me as a healthcare professional, this is not direct advice to patients, but just like if I met someone and they've like trained their cat to talk and like do all these different tricks, I'd be like, yeah, I trust them with my life. But that's just that's my bias speaking through. But
I mean, it's not very often that you see a trained cat, and maybe that's I wouldn't say I dislike cats. I like dogs more than cats, but I don't think I like cats enough to ever want to own them unless my significant other was like, yeah, we need a cat. I'm like, all right, fine.
I basically ambushed my partner with one when we got together. I was like, we're doing this now. It's funny because it's the dog walking. I do have days once in a while where I don't feel well enough to walk a dog. And that's why, like, and again, it's like, think about, my disability disables me. Like, even though you can try and like shove it down into that box sometimes and not acknowledge it, it's like there's certain choices in my life which are reflective of my health needs. And I always marvel at people who can like walk a dog reliably, because you have to take care of that creature. So yeah, I'll spend more time with my cats and my partner, and I don't know, go for some adventures, maybe do a second book. I do have an outline made already. So
I like it.
We'll see.
Maybe do a second book. I have an outline.
So I'm not allowed to bring my laptop on our next holiday. I've been banned from that, which I think is a good thing. And apparently 11 p.m. in bed is not an appropriate time to be talking about connective tissue conditions. So we're going to go on a personal improvement journey and expand my life outside my work.
I like it. What's one thing you hope people take from listening to you speaking today?
I think I just really want people to take away this most important lesson, which is that everyone is different with hEDS and HSD. Right now, we're dealing with a condition which is so varied. And until we get further clarification, and we may in future, maybe hEDS and HSD are like 10 different sub-conditions within this group. Who knows? Maybe the researchers will one day. But I want people to take away that your experience is your own. And I don't want you to be limited or held back by the experiences of others. Use them as information, use them as things you can look at, or maybe inspire discussions with your healthcare providers if necessary. But listen to your body, trust yourself, and see what's possible. That's what I want people to take away.
Love that. Where can people find you?
Everywhere. They can find me. Hypermobilityhq.com is my website. They can find me at HypermobilityHQ on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. My email is alex@hypermobilityhq.com. They can find my book. I recommend it. It's good. It's a lot of care went into it, and I'm really, really proud of it. So people can check it out. And the audiobook will be out late August. So I'm very excited about that. And yeah,
Awesome.
I also do have a clinic office in London. So I guess you could find me there.
Yeah.
I do enjoy when like other professionals or people reach out. I had a coffee the other day with another professional in this field. So I'm always happy to connect with this community, and I'm so grateful you had me on your amazing podcast. Like I'm a fan. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on. Real quick, Hypermobility HQ, can people video in to you? Like if they're in Cincinnati, for example?
For video appointments, absolutely. So I do work with patients online. Obviously it's like it's different than my in-person clinical work because I can't touch people, but that online consultation has been a significant part of my clinical work because I started my business during COVID. So absolutely, I do have my online clinic. It's on Thursdays. But yeah, and there's a contact form on my website. I'm always happy to speak with people as well because I just think everyone is so different. Everyone's needs are so different, and this field is so niche. So don't be a stranger. I'm a chatty, friendly Canadian. So reach out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blast of a podcast. We've been. Can you see the time on your end for how long we've been going? Oh, usually when I'm talking to a guest, like they can't see the time and all that, but like, yeah, 3 hours, 44 minutes. This will probably be edited down to cut out something. So it might not be on your end as the listener, but yeah, it's been a blast. You've been very informative. I also love the different stories that you're able to share. You're obviously very articulate as well with how you say the things that you say. So thank you so much for coming on. Did we miss anything? Is there anything else that you want to mention or shout out or?
No, the one thing I want to shout out is just the title of your podcast. I think people, it's just so important to continue to persist and to fight for those improvements that matter to you. And if I could tell myself something in my darkest hours, because there really were times when it was really difficult for me, and it doesn't, I mean, again, to be clear, I'm not cured. There is no cure. I will always have this condition, right? But it's like, if you can hold on and try and reach out through some means, whether it's to like, I don't know, friends or family or healthcare providers or whatever, like often there are little things that can either just get you through the difficult times. Like humor is something that is so important to me because it helps me going when times are tough, or things that can just improve your health, so just even like don't give up, I guess I would say. But I appreciate why people give up, and I totally understand. But like, if you can keep on keeping on and keep on rolling forward, then there might be some improvements around the bend.
Yeah, I love that. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining the Rolling Forward podcast. If you like what you heard, please hit that like button, subscribe, leave a comment. Any of that really helps the channel, but it helps give me feedback for what you liked, what you didn't like, any opinions you have that we talked about, any comments, put them in the comments. And if you know somebody that this episode might be good for, please share it. That also helps out the channel as well. Also buy the book. You want to hold that up one more time?
I do. I'm so proud of the cover. Absolutely.
Buy the book. Help Hypermobile. Go listen to Alex's podcast. I forgot, if you want to get a shirt, it says, gosh, I can't get it on camera. Yeah, go ahead.
It says, what I can't stand. You know what I can't stand? Punctuation matters and language matters. And I love that shirt.
Yeah. I was putting it on today. I was like, oh, she's an English major. Like this will be good.
I love it. I was like, I was charmed by it. I was charmed.
Yeah. But you can pick this up at rollingforward.printful.me. And if you have a story that you think is fitting for the podcast, please reach out. You might be my next guest. And until next time, keep rolling forward. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.